Greetings, dear viewers of Sleepy History, the only channel where history never sleeps, and neither will you after this episode. Have you ever dreamed of ancient Egypt, the pyramids, the gods, the radiant beauty of Cleopatra? Yeah, forget all that. Now imagine waking up to a leather whip, bathing in crocodile-infested swamp water, and getting sexually harassed by a raw onion. This isn't a documentary. This is a full-blown trauma simulator in 113-degree heat, wrapped in sarcasm and goat grease. Will our poor time travelers survive 24 hours of scorpion sand and sadistic deities? Tell us in the comments, if you could time travel for just one day, who would you be? A royal, a high priest, or just another unlucky soul oiled up like a sacrificial chicken? Close your eyes and let's begin. 4:00 a.m. Wake up, you filthy sack of bones. You're asleep, dreaming about something peaceful maybe. Be a bowl of lentil soup without sand in it. But then, slap! A palm hits your face with the grace of a collapsing pyramid. Wake up, you filthy sack of bones. Your eyes crack open to mud goat hair and despair. Before your mouth can even curse. Whoosh! An entire jar of water slaps your face like Poseidon lost a bet. Refreshing, sure. Invigorating, not quite. Congratulations. You've just been reborn as a slave in ancient Egypt. It's 4:00 a.m. You have no name, no ID, no rights. Just a spine, and it's mostly there so they can whip it. No alarms. Just violence. Here there's no gentle music, no chirping birds. Just a leather whip, someone screaming, in a voice that sounds like the gods are arguing, and somewhere nearby a dude squatting for his morning number 2 behind a palm tree. 1 second late, you get yelled at. 2 seconds late, you get kicked. 3 seconds late, you dig a grave for the guy who died yesterday for bathing at the wrong time. Your bed. It's more like a crime scene. You slept on a mat of sand and donkey pee under a roof made of half-dead palm leaves. Your pillow, a rock slightly less sharp than your life choices. Next to you, your cellmate. He has a genetic-level armpit stench and no concept of personal space. He also occasionally sleep talks in ancient goat. You try to sit up only to feel lice doing laps on your scalp. You scratch your head. 5 lice scatter like it's the Exodus. You look down. Yep, still wearing the loincloth from last flood season. Color expired broth. Smell poor. A nobleman rides past in a golden litter. He covers his nose, but still smiles. Peasant fermentation, smells like Egypt. You bow, out of instinct, fear, and the fact that your knees gave up on you last week. Your mouth still tastes like yesterday's swamp. Your nose blocked, probably from yourself. And it's only 4 a.m., 20 hours left to survive. Or to die from something stupid like breathing too loudly while dragging bricks. Wake up by water jar. 4:00 a.m. Cold, loud. Smells like goat pee. You might think the worst part of being a slave in ancient Egypt is hauling bricks under the sun. But no. The true horror is waking up. You fell asleep sometime after midnight, your back glued to the muddy earth. Your dreams interrupted by frogs trying to colonize your loincloth. And just as your brain finally agreed to forget your problems, crack, splash. A clay jar explodes with water. Not warm, friendly bath water. No, This is swamp juice from the same Nile that's full of hippo pee, dead fish, and divine indifference. You jolt awake, gasping, soaked, blinking mud from your eyes. And then, wake up, you sad excuse for a soul boom. Overseer voice, ringing in your skull like an unpaid debt. Welcome to day 2 of Regret Me. There's no gentle start here, no bird song, no rooster crow. Just the voice of a man who yells like it's his religion, and a splash of water so cold it slaps your ancestors. You sit up, your body creaking like an old wooden boat. Your lips are dry. Your eyes sting. Your mouth tastes like stale goat hair and yesterday's sandstorm. You're not dead, you're just in Egypt. Move, you Nile-grown moss creature. You hear it again. Same voice, louder now. You look up and see him, the overseer, shirtless, shiny, and holding a whip like it's an extension of his personality. He's soaked too, but he loves it. This is foreplay to him. He kicks over the next jar, splashing some poor soul who's still half dreaming about being a camel trader. Too late, buddy. We're all brick haulers now. No rights, no warnings, no coffee. Did you think you'd get a warning before being yelled at? Did you hope for a soft shoulder tap or a polite good morning? Please. This is ancient Egypt. You're not a citizen. You're not even a person. You're a walking shovel with emotions. And emotions are strictly discouraged. The overseer can punish you right where you sleep. Why, because you're replaceable, and your bed is just a suggestion drawn in dirt. It's not personal. It's pyramid business. Around you, other slaves are waking up too. Most are wet, confused, and limping from yesterday's enthusiasm. One guy sneezes and gets slapped. Another scratches his armpit and gets accused of wasting daylight. Someone farts. The overseer just screams louder, hoping the volume will beat the smell. The pharaoh doesn't care about your cramps, maggot. We break stones until Ra gets tired. You nod mostly out of fear your teeth will be restructured. This is the system. Slaves wake up between 3:30 and 4 a.m. Why so early? Because bricks don't stack themselves. Because Pharaoh wants pyramids. And Pharaoh doesn't sleep. Breakfast later. Maybe. First waterboarding by jug, followed by public shaming. Your new morning routine. Wake up to screaming. 2. Get slapped with Nile water. 3. Cough out mud. 4. Try not to die yet. 5. Line up. You stumble into lines surrounded by equally soggy humans pretending to be awake. One guy forgot his loincloth and is just rocking the breeze. No one comments. Modesty died years ago. You blink. You breathe. You suffer. The sun hasn't risen, but the mosquitoes have. They feast on your ankles like you're the buffet rub personally sent from the heavens. You're too tired to swat, too hungry to think. You whisper to yourself, "At least I wasn't born a dung collector." You're wrong. Dung collectors have chairs. The guy next to you mutters, "If I die today, bury me under the shade of a brick." There's no shade, someone replies. Then, don't bury me. Just let the crocodiles try. Everyone laughs. It's not funny, but we laugh because we're out of tears. You haven't even started work yet. You're still in the being screamed at and dripping phase of your day. And if you're lucky, you'll make it to lunchtime with all your teeth. So next time someone says, "I wish I could visit ancient Egypt," feel free to splash water in their face, scream, "Get up, brick maggot," and throw a dead frog at their pillow. Just doing your part for historical accuracy. In crocodile soup or 10 a.m. damp, cold, slightly infected, you thought the worst part of your morning was over after the splash attack and the whip sermon. Oh no, sunshine. That was just your introductory slap to another glamorous day as an unpaid brick goblin. Now comes the bath, a word that once promised refreshment, peace, and a little privacy. But here in ancient Egypt, it's just a bucket of parasites with dreams. You stumble over to the communal water pot, a massive jar full of hopes, dreams, and yesterday's regrets. You lean in. Big mistake. This water is not water. It's a thick, chunky soup of Nile history. You spot a suspicious scale 3 mosquito larvae and the tail of something that gave up halfway. Your nose wrinkles. It smells like somebody boiled a fish market inside a goat bladder. You reach in with a wooden ladle that has clearly seen some things. The moment it hits the surface, a mysterious bubble pops. Good morning, flesh rot. You look to your right. Another slave, older, wiser, twitchier. He leans in like he's about to share a state secret. Yesterday, the crocodiles passed through here. So today, the water should be cleaner. Relatively speaking, you nod like that helps. Because when your standards are this low, anything that doesn't actively bite you is called refreshing. You lift the ladle. The water sloshes thick, dark, and somehow gritty. You dump it over your head, cold, shockingly cold. I just made eye contact with an ancient god, cold. You scream, loud, a high-pitched involuntary noise that starts in your soul and ends somewhere near your kidneys. You freeze mid-shriek because he's watching. He turns, slowly, like a crocodile that just heard its dinner whimper. His eyes meet yours. He doesn't speak. He doesn't blink. He just stares. The message is clear. Who the ra do you think you are to scream without permission? You swallow the rest of your scream. Now it just echoes in your lungs like a haunted cough. You look down. Your feet are still covered in last night's silt. Your arms now have new mud on top of old sweat. It's like trying to rinse off with yesterday's soup. And somehow you now smell like wet lizard and betrayal. You dry off using the wind, which means standing around like a confused duck, while other equally damp humans pretend not to shiver. Someone sneezes. Another guy slips and lands in a puddle that might be a small pond or just one guy's tears. Nobody helps him. Helping is a luxury of people who don't have to lift rocks for breakfast. A few facts while your skin develops new bacteria. Lower-class Egyptians didn't filter or boil their water. They didn't chant to gods for water blessings. They just dipped in the Nile and hoped the dysentery gods were in a good mood. And since you're a slave, you don't even get Nile water directly. You get what the Nile left behind in jars after filtering through 3 crocodiles and a dozen frogs. It's called trickle-down hydration. Clean is a spectrum. You're not clean, but you are less visibly crusty, and that's a win in this economy. You check your armpit. Still smells like ambition and goat cheese. You check your foot. Still suspiciously itchy. A worm. A spiritual awakening. Who knows? You give up and just call it natural exfoliation. Let's talk side effects. The water clears the dust and replaces it with gut-wrenching bacteria. Your skin might be shinier, but that's just early-stage skin rot reflecting sunlight. Congratulations! You're technically cleaner, medically worse. A fellow slave leans over and says, "Last week I got a leech in my ear. It whispered ancient secrets." You nod politely. Another adds, "I found a fish egg in my nose. I think it's hatching." You step back slowly. This is the ancient Egyptian version of locker room small talk. He holds a golden jug filled with water so clear it could reflect your unpaid taxes. He takes one sip and pours the rest on a cat statue. You make eye contact. He doesn't see you because you're not a person. You're a brick with feelings. Your hygiene checklist. Cold shock to reset your trauma. Microbial stew to spice up your immune system. Overseer side-eye to remind you you're replaceable. Bonus leech content. You are now officially ready for work. Took a bath. Now I'm 5% cleaner, 200% wormier. At least I'm not thirsty anymore. You drank it. Regret is also hydrating. Breakfast rock, bread, and tooth fairy visits. You continue your adventure as a confused, underfed, spiritually crushed slave in ancient Egypt. So, after the world's sketchiest bath, which basically just rinsed off the outer layer of your filth while inviting parasites to move in, you're now ready for the next highlight of slave luxury life breakfast. Except breakfast in ancient Egypt doesn't come with avocado toast or espresso. It comes with rocks. Literal rocks. You slump down beside a cracked mud brick wall, still dripping swamp water, your modesty barely hanging on by a tattered loincloth that smells like expired goat cheese. In front of you, the food distributor, a guy whose job is to hand out disappointment, slams down your meal. One small brownish-gray bread that could double as a building material. One tiny cup of beer that fizzes like it's been carbonated by farts. You eye the bread suspiciously. It's shaped like a brick, weighs like a brick, and probably tastes like one too. You take a bite. Crack. Something snaps. Your front tooth just booked a one-way trip to the afterlife. Gone. You cough and smile politely like everything is fine, like your mouth isn't full of blood and regrets, because in ancient Egypt, pain is breakfast's best side dish. A fellow slave leans over, grinning, with only 3 teeth left in his mouth. "Careful, brother," he chuckles. "Yesterday, one guy found a whole pebble inside. Said it added texture." You nod weakly. The bread here is legendary, not for its taste, but for its geological properties. Why, because flour is ground using stone mills and surprise. That stone grinds into the flour, too. It's not so much bread as it is an edible construction hazard. By the way, your beer. Oh, don't get excited. This isn't your modern craft IPA with hints of orange peel and optimism. This is warm, weak barley soup that fizzes because it's still fermenting. It's chunky. It smells like someone yelled at wet rice. You sip, it burps back at you. But it's hydration, right? Even if you feel like it's fermenting you from the inside, Let's talk about that bread again. Each bite risks another tooth, but you can't not eat it, because this rock bread is your only solid meal until sunset. Well, unless you count sand as a snack, you'll be chewing plenty of that throughout the day anyway, thanks to the glorious desert winds and your open-air dining area, aka the dirt. There's no sauce, no cheese, no fruit, just bread and regret. But hey, sometimes they give you onion. That's right, one raw onion. That's their idea of a balanced meal. One bread brick, one fart beer, one tear-inducing onion. The holy trinity of Egyptian slave nutrition. Let's break the fourth wall for a second. Historians have found that many Egyptian skeletons, especially those of the working class, show severe dental wear. Why? Because that lovely stone-ground flour they used was full of quartz particles, sand, and bits of the grinder itself. So yeah, if you're wondering why everyone over 30 looks like a toothless grandma, it's the breakfast, Karen. Back to your miserable meal. You turn to your friend who's busy gumming his bread like a champion. He raises an eyebrow and says, "You know it's a good batch when it scratches your throat and soul." You both laugh. Or, well, you make a noise that might be a laugh, might be a gag, hard to tell with the choking hazard lodged halfway down your windpipe. A nobleman walks by, perfumed and pampered, holding a golden tray with grapes and actual meat. He looks down at you, at your sand-coated lips, at your missing tooth, at the beer that's bubbling like it wants to escape its own existence. And he says, "Ah, the authentic taste of the lower class must be rustic." You want to throw your bread at him, but you don't. Because one, it's your only food, and two, it's technically a lethal weapon. So you finish the meal with tears in your eyes, bleeding gums, and the vague hope that one day archaeologists will dig up your body and say, "Wow, this one clearly died from breakfast." And they'll be right. Summing up the slave menu: bread crunchy, chewy, and legally a choking hazard. Beer. It's beer in the same way wet socks are wine. Onion optional for flavor or sadness. Sand complimentary, adds crunch. That's your fuel for the 16 hours of back-breaking labor that follow. And guess what? Tomorrow, it's the same meal. Maybe slightly moldier, maybe with a bonus beetle baked in. Bon appetit. You're going to move rocks, big ones, for hours, with no shoes, in the sun. Because breakfast is just the warm-up in ancient Egypt. Diarrhea, body odor, and yes, you still have to drag rocks. The slave life just keeps getting worse. You thought losing a tooth to breakfast was bad. Now your stomach wants to escape your body. So, you just survived breakfast, the dental apocalypse edition. You're trying to psych yourself up for a day of hauling giant rocks across burning sand with sunstroke, gently knocking on your skull like, "Hey, can I ruin your life today?" But before you can even think about lifting anything, your stomach speaks. Grrr. Oh no, that's not hunger. That's liquid regret incoming. Last night's fermented camel piss, beer, and that charmingly abrasive bread brick have fused into an intestinal death spiral. You clench, you look around. No toilet. Of course not. This is ancient Egypt, baby. No stalls, no privacy, not even a polite bush to whimper behind. You shuffle behind the nearest tent, praying no one sees your shame. But this is the slave quarter. Everyone's already pooping somewhere. You awkwardly squat over a dried-up patch of dirt, desperately trying not to make eye contact with the guy next to you who's also mid-explosion. There's no paper, no water, no dignity, just fleas. So many flies. And the smell, oh dear Ra. It hits you like a pharaoh's curse, hot, sulfurous, and deeply personal. You gag. Your body breaks out in a fevered sweat, not just from embarrassment, but from the actual fever bubbling inside you. You're not alone. Everyone's sick. Half the workers are sweating like diseased goats, and the other half are too dehydrated to form opinions. And yet you still hear the call, move back to work. Rocks don't drag themselves. You stand up, pants, still sticking to your thighs, trembling, nauseated, dripping in stress sweat, and not the sexy kind. You're a leaking sack of despair with a mild case of explosive butt syndrome. A slave overseer walks past. He eyes your shaky posture, the green tinge on your face, the rivers pouring from your armpits. Then he scoffs and says, "Sickness is for nobility. You're a shadow on the sand," which is a poetic way of saying die quietly. But don't forget to lift heavy things first. Let's pause for a quick, fun historical truth. Bomb. TM. In ancient Egypt, if you were a slave and got sick, nobody gave a flying scarab. You were a disposable asset, like a shovel or a mop, but more likely to cry. Diarrhea. Too bad. Worms, walk it off. Fever. Drink some more beer and hope it kills you faster. Medical care, reserved for the rich. The moment your productivity drops, they're already checking your replacement's paperwork. You stumble toward the worksite, dragging your feet, and your damaged pride. The sun is already up, and it's doing its thing, trying to cook you alive. Your linen wrap is soaked with sweat. Your back itches from dried swamp water. Your armpits smell like a camel died inside them, and someone tried to cover it with sour onions. You whisper to yourself, "Surely I've earned a break after crapping my soul out right." Wrong. Here's the fun part. Ancient Egyptian deodorant did not exist for slaves. Bathing was optional. Soap, a myth. And even if you wanted perfume, it was made of things like animal fat, crushed flowers, and possibly hope, all things you can't afford. So yes, you stink. Everyone stinks. But you stink with extra gusto. One guy next to you tries to lift a stone block, bends down, and immediately vomits on his own feet. Nobody bats an eye. Another guy is clearly hallucinating from sunstroke. He's talking to a beetle and calling it father. Still, nobody cares. Because unless you're actively dead, you're expected to haul rocks until your spine whispers, "We had a good run." And let's not forget the pharaoh's priests. Oh, they walk by in golden robes, holding scented cones on their heads, judging you from 20 cubits away. One of them mutters, "Smells like demons." You want to scream. It's called body odor. Chad, try pooping in the open after rock bread. But you don't scream, because screaming takes energy, and you need that energy to not die in the next 10 minutes. At this point, you wonder, how do people survive this answer? Most don't. Diarrhea parasites and heat stroke were among the top killers of the working class. Egyptian medical texts talk a lot about curing demons and balancing magic forces, but for slaves, no treatment, no rest days, just beer and death. Your body's screaming. Your guts are a blender. Your brain is floating above your head, watching this tragedy unfold like it's some weird historical sitcom. Welcome back to Everybody Hates Slavery, sponsored by Internal Bleeding. You drop to your knees, breathing heavy. The sun laughs. A stone slips from your grasp and lands inches from your foot. A fellow worker looks over and says, "Don't worry. If it breaks your leg, they'll just toss you in the sand and get another one of us." He's not joking. You nod because honestly, that sounds peaceful. But you get up. Because that's what you do. You wipe your face, you cough, you fart again. You grab the rope tied to your next 800-pound best friend and start dragging it across the earth, your diarrhea flapping behind you like a shameful cape. So to recap, you've pooped outdoors like a farm animal. You smell like fermented onions left in a dead bird. You're sick, sunburnt, and sleep-deprived. You still have 9 hours of rock hauling left. But hey, at least breakfast didn't kill you. Yet. Body odor and spiritual bias. You finally catch a moment to walk upright after hours of squatting, lifting, sweating, and possibly shitting your soul out. The air is dry. Your tunic smells like a gym sock dipped in donkey piss. And your armpits. Let's just say they've developed a personality of their own. You're dragging your feet toward the quarry entrance when you hear it chimes. Soft silk rustling. That's when you see them, a noble procession. There they are, high-born Egyptians with eyeliner sharper than your tools, reclining on gold-trimmed litters, carried by servants who probably smell like lotus petals and generational wealth. As they pass, one lady slightly turns her head, her nose twitching. She lifts a perfumed handkerchief to her face and still manages to mutter through gritted, pearl-white teeth. Ah, the scent of the working class. So earthy, so fermented. The others giggle, but it's that silent rich people kind of giggle, the kind that hurts more than an actual slap. You bow your head, of course. That's what you're taught. Don't look, don't speak, just sweat and disappear. But as you bow your shadow, your cursed, hard-working little shadow slides across the sandal of the noble's footrest. Just a shadow, just a smudge of light. That's when the shriek hits, heathen. Your shadow touched my holy transport. That's profanity against Ra himself. A temple priest appears out of nowhere, like they've been waiting all day just to smite a peasant. You stammer, "I didn't mean to, I'm just too late." You're already on the floor, slapped in the name of celestial hierarchy. Again. In ancient Egypt, a person's shadow or shwawat was believed to be part of the soul. Touching a noble's body, or even letting your shadow fall on them, was considered an insult to both the person and the gods who blessed them. A shadow in the wrong place could be interpreted as a curse. Oh, and about that, stench. Yes, ancient Egyptians valued cleanliness a lot. But, spoiler alert, soap wasn't free, and perfume wasn't exactly handed out with your daily grain ration. The elites slathered themselves in imported oils, lotus balms, and cinnamon paste. Meanwhile, you're rocking the signature fragrance of the 99%. Sweat denial with undertones of open sewer and regret. In ancient Egypt, smelling like a person meant you were poor. Smelling like nothing at all. That meant you were suspicious. Smelling like flowers, witchcraft. Obvious. You're not just poor, you're olfactorily oppressed. You returning to your sandstone pile of misery, the noble's laughter echoing behind you. You take one last whiff under your armpit shrug and mutter, "Could be worse. Could smell like optimism." You pick up the rope and start hauling again, now officially a criminal in the eyes of the sun for having a shadow. Wrap up and bleed into lunchtime. You've lost a tooth, survived a crock water shower, and pooped your soul out behind a bush. And yet, life goes on. Specifically, life goes on to the part where you carry sacred mortar for a god you don't even have time to pray to. Suddenly, the air rips open with a scream. Number 39. Move your flea-ridden legs. It's your turn to carry the holy paste. You're 39 now. Not a name, not a person, just a number. A sweaty, half-dead number. You step forward, grab the bucket, and feel your spine audibly reconsider your existence soon. Your brain, on the other hand, starts composing poetry. Roses are dead. My teeth are too. This isn't a dream, it's ancient Egypt, boo. The sun is melting your hopes. Your sandals are on fire. And someone behind you just passed out face first into a dung pile. You don't even flinch. You just whisper to yourself, "If I survive till lunch, I'm treating myself to swallowing without chewing." Still morning, but my soul already clocked out. 1200. Noon, butt-burning, sun, back blistering stones. The sun is no longer in the sky. It has descended right onto your back. Just moments ago, you were absent-mindedly scratching your sunburnt butt, trying to shake off the morning's diarrhea, bruised molars, and a mild spiritual crisis. But there's no time to process any of that. Because from a distance, a voice screeches like a camel being exorcised. "Oi, human worm, number 39, get your ass in formation." You look around, surely he's not talking to you. Oh, but he is. The whip confirms it. And just like that, break time is over. Not that it ever officially began. In ancient Egypt, there's no lunch break. There's only the brief period between "I think I might die" and "Nope, still alive, keep pulling." Water. You'll get a splash if you cry hard enough to be considered irrigation. Shade. Only if you faint behind a taller slave. Rest. That's reserved for pharaohs and the dead. You squint toward the horizon, and there it is, the rock. Big enough to crush your spirit. Shiny enough to make you question your life choices. Sacred enough that if you even sneeze near it, you'll be accused of defiling national architecture with demonic snot. As you join the 100-man crew assigned to haul this stone sauna on ropes made of plant fiber, and sadness, one thought circles your sun-boiled brain: this isn't labor. This is a sacrifice. And I'm the goat. Now grab the rope, baby. It's time to pull history forward with your spine. Stone pulling the Olympics of sweat, blood, and regret. So here you are, bare hands, bare feet, barely alive. Your task: pull a limestone block the size of your cousin's SUV across 20 kilometers of sun-fried sand. Oh, and did we mention it's 45 degrees Celsius? The sand is so hot it's cooked 2 scarabs and a scorpion on your way here. But you get no sandals. Why would a slave need those blisters? Build character. You glance up at the cargo, a massive sacred divine block, destined to become part of a pharaoh's future tomb. The pharaoh who, by the way, isn't even dead yet. Nope. He's alive, very alive. In fact, he's currently reclining in the shade of an obsidian parasol sipping date wine while 8 shirtless nobles fan his sweat-free armpits with palm leaves. Their only job: keep Pharaoh cool enough so his makeup doesn't melt. Your job: die artistically behind a rock. You and 100 other sunburnt souls grab hold of a fiber rope that feels like a cactus got into BDSM. Your job is to pull and chant. Because in ancient Egypt, you don't just move giant rocks, you sing them forward. Yep, there's a chant captain at the front yelling, heave ho, miss the rhythm. Trip over your own legs. Sing 1 syllable off-beat. Boom, you're on poop mixing duty for the next week. Or worse, they accuse you of disturbing the harmony of sacred geometry. You could end up buried under the very block you tried to move. Talk about becoming one with the architecture. Behind you lurks the overseer, a man whose voice sounds like a crocodile passing a kidney stone. He carries a whip made of dried hippo skin and disappointment. Every few minutes, he offers some motivational support. You call that a pull? My grandmother could drag that rock with her tits. Or hey, number 39, blink slower or you'll waste air. You think about saying something clever, but then you remember the guy last week who rolled his eyes. He's now buried under the training ramp. His grave marker says, too sassy, not classy. 12 noon. The sun is no longer burning you. It's baking you, like bread. Except you're the yeast, the dough, and the oven. Your stomach growls louder than the rope squeaks. You'd kill for a fig, or a roach, or anything not covered in sand and existential despair. But food comes after the boulder has reached its divine resting place. Resting place for the rock that is. Not for you. You keep going like a pyramid-shaped Roomba powered by trauma. Let's take a break for some historical trivia. Because why not? Ancient Egyptians really did move multi-ton blocks by hand, often over 20 kilometers without wheels, oxen, or common sense. Instead, they used sledges and poured water on the sand to reduce friction. They also sang synchronized chants to keep pace. Miss a beat. You didn't just throw off rhythm, you risked collapsing the entire human centipede of misery. So yes, music was sacred. And if you ever wondered what it felt like to be a human metronome hauling death bricks across Satan's beach, now you know. You're halfway through the desert death crawl when your hand slips. Rope burn, sand in your teeth. Overseer yells again. No slacking! You think this pyramid's gonna build itself. You whisper back, I was kinda hoping, yeah? But you whisper too loud. And now you've earned today's bonus task, shoveling camel dung into a vat of mud and straw to make brick paste. Why? Because in Egypt, cow shit equals cement. Yes, your punishment is also your construction material, A song out of tune equals a life out of time. As you limp past the palm tree graveyard of collapsed slaves, you hear it. A guy behind you starts humming a melancholy tune. Not the official chant. Something off. Something sad. Suddenly, the chant halts. The overseer's eyes narrow. Who dares bring melancholy into the sacred procession? The man replies, "It's just a song about my mother." Too late. He's tackled by 3 guards and dragged to the side. As they carry him away, someone whispers, "Never sing sad songs near limestone. It weakens morale and the structural integrity." He'll be reassigned to carving temple urinals for eternity. You stay silent. You keep pulling. You keep humming in your head. Hours pass. You're sweating from your elbows. Your soul has developed a sunburn. And just when you think your spine is about to file for divorce, you hear it, halt, block position. You drop the rope. Your hands scream. Your knees quit. Your brain tries to climb out of your ears. But inside your cracked lips, a tiny voice says, "I did it. I survived the pull." Then you see the next block rolling in, and someone shouts, "All right, break's over." Next stone, you laugh, you cry, you pass out with your eyes open. Ready for the next scene, Pharaoh's bathtub needs heating. With human firewood, cough equals crime, offenses you never knew existed. So you've survived the first 2 hours of dragging a boulder that clearly hates you under a sun that wants you dead while being yelled at by a man with all the charm of a diseased hippo. Great, but don't let your guard down, because in ancient Egypt, the real punishment doesn't come from what you do wrong. It comes from what you didn't even know was wrong. Let's say you cough. Just one dry, miserable cough from inhaling too much pyramid dust. Bam! Next thing you know, you're knee-deep in crocodile-scented cow dung, mixing it with clay and straw to make sacred mortar. Congratulations, your lungs just got you promoted to Chief Dung Kneader. But wait, it gets worse. Some poor soul in your labor gang decides to pass the time by humming a sad tune while dragging stone. You know, just a little sorrowful melody to match the crushing despair of his job. Big mistake. Within minutes, he's being yelled at for injecting negative spiritual energy into the pharaoh's eternal legacy. Apparently, emotional expression is banned within a 10-meter radius of royal architecture. We build in silence and pain, thank you very much. Then there's you. All you did was yawn. One yawn. Not even a dramatic yawn, just a polite, tired, I woke up at 4 a.m. to bathe in alligator water kind of yawn. But guess what? You've now been labeled a suspicious soul showing apathy toward national destiny. That's right. You're on the list. You get your name shouted in front of the whole site like it's morning roll call in hell. Number 43. Why is your face expressing fatigue? Do you dare feel tired before death? In ancient Egypt, emotions are like tattoos. Once you show them in public, they're permanently on your record. Cough equals weak lungs, unfit for the gods. Yawn equals lack of faith in Pharaoh's vision. Sad song equals psychological terrorism against pyramid morale. It's performance review season every second of your life. Except the only feedback you'll get is more pain. less sighing. Believe it or not, these bizarre punishments aren't totally made up. Archaeological evidence and written records suggest mortar for temples and tombs really did include a mix of mud, straw, and animal dung. It was considered sacred and highly effective if you ignored the smell. Emotional control and groupthink were key tools for managing massive forced labor. Public shaming and psychological pressure were more common than physical punishment. Laborers had to keep rhythm, often using songs or chants to synchronize movement. But losing that rhythm could be seen as sabotage, or at least grounds for extra supervision. You learn very quickly in this place, it's not about what you do, it's about how publicly inconveniently or audibly you do it. Your job is to exist as invisibly as possible. Don't feel, don't sing, don't breathe wrong, and whatever you do, never ask for a water break. Otherwise, you'll be in charge of the sacred poop-mud mix again. And nobody wants to be the reason Pharaoh's tomb smells like a cow exploded. Choti! In ancient Egypt, your job wasn't to build pyramids. It was to not annoy anyone while building pyramids. Next up, you thought labor was hell. Wait until you meet the guy who checks your soul alignment by measuring your sweat rhythm. Welcome to Part 4, Spiritual Misconduct and Other Dumb Reasons to Die in the Sand. Thirst, heat, and nowhere to fall, how to die standing up in ancient Egypt. So, you have coughed too loudly, sang too sadly, and yawned your way into eternal surveillance. But the Pharaoh's pyramid isn't going to build itself, so you're back at its shirt, sticking to your back feet on fire, and brain slowly melting inside your skull like a forgotten clay pot in a kiln. It's noon. The sun isn't just shining, it's attacking. A 45-degree-C heat wave crashes down like divine punishment. Your lips are dry. Your throat is a desert within a desert, and your eyeballs feel like someone's grilling dates behind them. You build up the courage like a gladiator stepping into the lion's den to ask the overseer, "Can I have some water?" Wrong move, because in ancient Egypt, hydration is not a right. It's a controlled substance. Instead of fresh water, someone throws you a clay cup filled with something. It's murky, lukewarm, smells like ancient socks and half-fermented bread. You take a sip. It's not water. It's light beer, the Egyptian version. A half-fermented barley brew that tastes like someone whispered the word beer over a cup of cloudy dishwater. Your thirst is slightly less painful. Your dignity, however, is fully deceased. Next to you, a fellow slave, let's call him Sadek, collapses face first into the sand. Not dramatically, not even loudly. Just plop. Heat stroke. Simple, deadly, common. But no one moves. No one dares. Because in this cursed labor camp of sunburned despair, helping someone who falls is considered suspicious behavior. You might be accused of collusion, interrupting workflow, or worst of all, falling down fakingly. And in the eyes of the overseer, faking exhaustion is a crime worse than dying from it. Sadek groans once, then nothing, and the work continues around him like he's a fallen tool, not a person. Welcome to peak human rights in 2500 BCE, the right to collapse alone and be ignored. But let's not forget the most personal, painful betrayal of all the sand. It gets everywhere. You sweat, it sticks. You move, it grinds. You bend down to move a block, and suddenly, it's like someone poured gravel into your underwear. By midday, Your walking style has evolved into a sort of tortured crab shuffle horse ride hybrid. You look like you're riding an invisible camel made of fire and shame. And no, there's no changing room, no clean cloth, no anti-chafing cream. Just you, your sand-infested dignity, and another 6 hours of pyramid assembly line. Midday temperatures in ancient Egypt often hit 40–45 degrees, and you're working directly under the sun with no shade unless you faint and fall under your own shadow. Slaves and workers didn't have personal water bottles. They drank from shared jars or more often consumed weak beer made from fermented barley. It was considered nutritional, but mostly because it killed the bacteria in Nile water. Helping someone who collapsed could be viewed as interfering with divine labor. Superstition ruled the site. If you fall, maybe it's because you displeased a god. So, your problem. Hydration, only if you're holy. Collapse, only if it's silent. Suffering, unlimited. Welcome to Egyptian Labor HR. Imagine explaining this to your future therapist if you survive long enough to invent psychology. You'd think, with all this suffering, there'd at least be some corner of mercy, like a shaded tent, or a lunch break, or the ability to sit down. But no, there's no place to fall, no rest area, no medical tent. If you collapse, your body is just in the way. If you cry, your tears evaporate before anyone notices. If you ask, "Why am I doing this?" someone will quote a sacred scroll at you about eternal honor in serving the afterlife. All of this, for a pyramid, you'll never live to see finished. For a pharaoh, you've never spoken to. For gods, you're not allowed to question. And yet, you keep going, because stopping is a luxury, and fainting is a risk. And here's the weirdest part. Amidst the pain, the heat, the fermented barley, sadness, you look around and realize everyone else is still moving too. No one complains, no one rests, no one breaks. Because you're all in this together, a symphony of suffering, a choreography of survival. So you take another step, and another. Sand still grinding, thirst still clawing. But hey, at least you didn't cough this time. In ancient Egypt, the greatest sin wasn't rebellion. It was needing a break. Up next, when death finally comes, you'd think there's relief. But no, even the afterlife has a dress code, paperwork, and a judgmental crocodile god. Welcome to Part 5, Bureaucracy of the Dead. How to flunk the afterlife in 42 ways. Back. Tattoos and the spiritual death sentence. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where tattoos weren't trendy. They were the ancient HR department's way of saying, "You're fired from the afterlife." You're barely dragging your sunburnt legs back to the stone line when your vision goes blurry and your soul whispers, "Can we not today?" You muster up the courage more than it took to pull a 2-ton rock and politely say to the overseer, "Sir, may I rest for a moment? I feel like my pancreas is melting." Big mistake. The man doesn't yell. He smiles, then calls over 2 men holding a branding stick that's been warming up nicely over a dung fire. Before you can say, "I'll keep working," you're face down in the sand, shirt ripped off, and the smell of burning flesh hits you before the pain does. The sentence, "Not worthy of the Nile," tattooed right across your back in red ink, for everyone, including the crocodiles, to see. Because in ancient Egypt, Failure wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. You've just earned the scarlet letter of the desert, and the consequences go way beyond job loss. Word spreads quickly. Those branded with dishonor are cursed to be unworthy of mummification. That means no embalming, no fancy coffin, no welcome to the afterlife fruit basket from Osiris. Just a shallow hole in the sand and the eternal side eye of Sobek, the crocodile god, who allegedly snacks on restless souls like you during full moons. A fellow slave whispers, once they mark your back, even your ghost gets evicted. Sobek eats it, or worse, makes you his butt scratcher for eternity. But wait, it gets more spiritual. You overhear the temple priests saying that anyone tainted by the mark disrupts the purity of the sacred labor field. Basically, you're not just lazy, you're cosmically problematic. Now everyone avoids you. Even the sick guy who coughed blood yesterday moves away. You're untouchable. In a workplace with literal pyramids of poop, you are the gross one. No one dares talk to you, share food with you, or even make eye contact in case they inherit your laziness through eye beaming, which apparently was a real superstition. You think, how did asking for 5 minutes of shade turn into a lifetime supply of social exile and cosmic damnation? Simple. In ancient Egypt, they didn't just punish your body. They punished your reputation, your soul, and your family honor across time and space. In modern jobs, you might get fired. In ancient Egypt, you got cursed so hard your great-grandkids feel guilty. Egyptians believed a proper burial and mummification were essential to access the afterlife. Without preservation of the body, the soul couldn't reunite with it in the next world. Physical markings, especially publicly visible ones, were used as permanent shame symbols for criminals and social outcasts. Religious fear was heavily weaponized to keep laborers obedient because nothing motivates like eternal torment by a crocodile god. Midday. Wrap-up. When sunlight feels like a death sentence. Congratulations, it's noon, and you're still alive technically. You crawl no ooze into the corner of a tattered linen tent that smells like boiled armpit and regret. Your skin is a new shade of roasted sandstone. Your hands tremble like you just kissed a live scarab. And your smile. It's the twisted grin of someone who knows they're not making it to sunset. Next to you, another poor soul leans in and whispers, "Afternoon shift's coming." That's when we push the stones. Uphill. You both share the laugh of people on death row. It's not joy, it's joint psychological collapse. You glance up at the blazing sky, eyes squinting through sweat and trauma. And you wonder, not for the first time, has anyone ever survived 24 hours here without turning into a sun-dried relic? You try to drink from your clay mug, but all you get is one drop of warm, sad beer. It tastes like someone whispered hydration into a bucket of barley. Your legs are cramping. Your back's on fire. Your soul is floating somewhere near Mercury. And still, you know you have to go back out there, face the stone, the sun, and the screaming. And you suddenly realize something painfully ironic. I'm not sure if I'm building a tomb for the pharaoh or just digging my own. Welcome to ancient Egypt, baby. Lunch is over. The real suffering is just beginning. Afternoon. Even your shadow is guilty. You might think that after a morning of spine-melting heat and an afternoon of sun-fried sanity, the evening in ancient Egypt would finally offer a break. A pause. A single blessed moment to collapse like a sun-dried lizard and whisper to the sky, "Just let me survive till dinner." Wrong. Afternoon in Egypt wasn't a time to rest. It was the hour of the gods. The shift change between Ra, the sun god, and the creeping dusk where chaos loomed. This was when priests chanted louder, guards watched sharper, and everyone else tiptoed like their soul was hanging by a thread. And guess what? Yours probably was. You, a mere dust-flavored mortal, decide to crawl out of your shaded corner for a sip of water. Your tongue feels like a mummified sandal, and every step is a personal betrayal by your kneecaps. You spot a corridor, cool, shaded, vaguely sacred-looking. Surely a water jug must be nearby. You step in, and that's when it happens. 3 seconds. That's all it takes. You lock eyes with a high priestess, her eyeliners sharper than your sense of self-worth. Her robes shimmer like punishment. Her gaze, a divine slap from 20 meters away. Boom! You're grabbed by 2 guards before your sweat has time to fall. One whispers like death itself. You've offended the spirit of Isis. Excuse me, what you blink? You were just looking for hydration, not spiritual violation. But here's the thing. In ancient Egypt, eye contact wasn't a social cue. It was a criminal offense, especially if you dared to glance at someone holier, richer, or simply more symmetrical than you. And women of rank untouchable, unseeable. If her kohl eyeliner has more layers than your life expectancy, look away. If she walks with more gold than a pyramid's treasury, turn around. If she breathes near you, hold your breath until she's out of sight or you pass out. Whichever comes first. Because the rules were not built to protect you. They were built to punish you. And there's always room for one more sinner under the temple floor. So now, you're kneeling in the dirt arms, twisted guards muttering curses while preparing ink and a branding iron. You don't get a lawyer. You get a tattoo, an eye of Horus, scorched onto your forehead, so the gods and everyone else can see exactly what you are. A walking offense. And for what a glance. A drip of curiosity. A quest for water. Ancient Egyptian justice didn't deal in warnings. It dealt in scars. People say, don't stare at the sun. In ancient Egypt, don't stare at anyone with eyeliner darker than yours. So no, the afternoon isn't gentle. It's a spiritual landmine, where a misstep earns you divine punishment and a new face tattoo you didn't ask for. Welcome to the second half of your day, where the sun might be setting, but your misery, it's just getting warmed up. Social hierarchy. Looking is a crime. In ancient Egypt, eye contact meant one thing: you wanted to die faster. So you've just been publicly eyelashed and forehead branded for daring to look at a high priestess. Congratulations, you've graduated from hydration seeker to divinely cursed pervert, all in 0.5 seconds. And you're still confused. I was just being polite. Isn't it rude not to make eye contact? In ancient Egypt, numb. In fact, not looking is the most polite thing you could do, unless you're trying to look away from a god, in which case you might still be screwed. This isn't your local coffee shop. This is a society where the act of glancing could land you in prison. Or worse, social exile with a souvenir tattoo. Imagine this. A noble woman, let's say a high priestess of Isis, is walking down the sacred path near the temple. She's not alone. She's flanked by 4 guards who are literally trained to block your face from seeing hers like human privacy screens. Behind her, attendants toss flower petals, and the air smells like perfume and powdered gold. And what about the people cowering, face down, prostrating on dirt? Because if your eyeballs accidentally peek above ankle level, that's it. You're toast. Sun-dried and God-certified toast. You being new here and still operating on modern human logic, lift your head for 0.5 seconds. That's not a metaphor. We counted. Half a second. Blink once and boom, you're surrounded. 2 guards pin your arms, a third pulls out the punishment scroll, and the 4th cracks a whip for emphasis. And the high priestess didn't even flinch. She doesn't need to. The system works for her. She floats away in luxury while you're being body slammed by patriarchy and matriarchy at the same time. Because here's the kicker. In ancient Egypt, noble women, especially priestesses and queens, held real power. Political, spiritual, and physical. And while modern society still debates whether women should have equal rights, in 1500 BCE they already did. Equal rights to destroy you. This isn't just slapstick fantasy. It's backed by ancient law and culture. Noble women, especially those tied to the pharaoh or the temple, were considered semi-divine. Looking at them was equated with gazing into the divine realm uninvited. Slaves like you were considered so lowly that making eye contact with a high-ranking woman was a literal spiritual offense. Punishment, public humiliation, tattooing, whipping, and sometimes exile from holy spaces. The goal wasn't just to punish you, it was to make an example of you. So yes, your name just got added to the village's wall of shame under the cheerful category, lustful gaze upon sacred flesh. Once, offense. You try to protest. I wasn't lusting, I was squinting. Doesn't matter, that's how cults work. And here the entire society is a cult with God's taxes and really aggressive eyeliner. Imagine walking into a CEO's office. You smile politely, say hello. Suddenly, 4 security guards pin you down. Someone pulls out a branding iron. Your forehead now says inappropriate smile in Comic Sans. HR doesn't even blink. Now multiply that by scarab beetles' sacred laws and an obsession with cosmic order. That's ancient Egypt's upper class. Let's break it down with a simple visual. Top of the pyramid, pharaoh, basically a god on earth, sun-kissed, untouchable, probably glowing. Queen, high priestess. Not far behind, divine by association. Their eye makeup alone has more authority than you'll ever earn. Middle layers, nobles and priests. They write the rules, interpret omens, bless food. Also make sure you never rise above dirt with feet. Scribes and overseers. They can read. That's already suspicious. They write down your name every time you screw up. Bottom sludge. You. Slave. Sand gremlin. Your job. Lift heavy things. Never make eye contact. Bleed quietly. Even your shadow is considered unworthy in some temples. That's right. You can commit a spiritual offense just by standing wrong. There were written taboos about the gaze of the unworthy. Slaves could not speak unless spoken to, enter certain sacred spaces, eat before nobles were finished, look at anyone who outranked them, which, spoiler alert, is everyone. It was a world run by order, not justice, not fairness, just pure hierarchical ma'at, a system of balance where your face being out of place was enough to tip the cosmic scales. You exist only to serve sweat and shrink. Your forehead now features a freshly inked Eye of Horus, not as protection, but as a warning label, a public display of your offense. It screams, "This one dared to see the divine. Now you see him and learn, don't be stupid." It's the ancient Egyptian version of a scarlet letter, except more literal and much more painful. You get shoved out of the sacred zone, limping, bleeding, with your new branding sizzling in the sun. Kids point. Elders spit. One cat judges you more harshly than the guards. In ancient Egypt, gender equality meant men and women could both destroy your life equally. And that's just the beginning of the afternoon. You thought you were building pyramids? Nope. You're being buried by one socially, spiritually, and symbolically. Now drink some sand cry and hieroglyphs and prepare. Because the next part of your day, you're going to find out what it feels like to push a 1-ton rock up a hill with a bruised forehead and a criminal record. Even your shadow breaks the law. In the modern world, your shadow keeps you cool. In ancient Egypt, it gets you mutilated. Welcome to the afternoon shift, where the sun starts to dip. And so do your chances of survival. After surviving the blazing noon heat with third-degree burns on your soul, you're back on brick-hauling duty. You're dizzy sweating, and your sandals have disintegrated into sad strips of leather. But hey, just one more trip to the temple warehouse, and whack, your ears are ringing. Why? Because your shadow, yes, that thing behind you, has just disrespected a god. Here's what happened. While carrying a basket of bricks shaped like regret, you walk past a statue of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, just as the sun shifts slightly. Your shadow, unaware of its divine obligations, briefly casts over the god's face. Now imagine doing something as harmless as standing in someone's selfie shot today, and being punished with ear removal. That's ancient Egypt for you. In this lovely theocratic dystopia, your shadow wasn't just a dark patch of physics. It was considered part of your soul, known as shwat. And a soul touching a divine object without clearance, that's basically high treason. And yes, they had actual laws about it. Archaeologists have found stone tablets from the New Kingdom era stating punishments for shadow offenses in temples, ceremonies, and processions. Think of it as religious assault via light physics. Let's take our unfortunate brick hauler as an example. You didn't mean it. You didn't even see it happen. But a temple guard did, and to him you've just spiritually slapped a god in the face. Punishment. Oh, they kept it light. One ear gone, name struck from the dinner list, which was already just onion soup. Arms may be bound in a purification pose for 3 hours. And to top it off, a ritual smear of curse remover, which is just crocodile dung mixed with myrrh and wishful thinking smeared directly on your chest. Spiritual Febreze, but with more parasites. You're told that this will cleanse your soul, But judging by the stench, it's mostly cleansing the temple courtyard of anyone with a nose. As absurd as it sounds, this wasn't just religious theater. It was a carefully constructed power mechanism. In ancient Egypt, the gods weren't distant metaphors. They lived in statues. The pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was the human embodiment of Horus. Temples weren't public spaces. They were celestial bureaucracies where one sneeze in the wrong hallway could get you cursed. Everything around you had a sacred hierarchy, and even your shadow was expected to follow protocol. In fact, there are recorded cases where entire families were punished collectively if someone's shadow entered a holy zone, because clearly shadows ran in the family. Let's imagine this system today. You're walking past a corporate CEO. Your phone accidentally connects to their AirPods for 0.2 seconds. Boom! You're publicly shamed on LinkedIn, fired, and your entire Spotify history gets subpoenaed for evidence of moral decay. Absurd, yes, but to an Egyptian high priest, totally reasonable. They genuinely believed that divine order was fragile and could be corrupted by anything as simple as an unsanctioned glance or a misbehaving silhouette. So naturally, gods needed bodyguards and statues needed anti-shadow protocols. It's the ancient equivalent of no-flash photography, or shadows, or thoughts. Just breathe, but not too spiritually. The Egyptians lived in a cosmic sandwich. Above you, gods who could smite you for misusing eyeliner. Below you, demons waiting to eat your heart in the afterlife. Around you, priests who thought your every twitch was either prophecy or profanity. They had over 400 deities, and each one came with its own quirks, followers, and taboos. So when your shadow touched a god's nose, it wasn't just physics. It was a spiritual break-in, a soul trespassing event, a minor metaphysical apocalypse. The worst part, nobody cared about your intention, just your shadow's trajectory. Location, temple courtyard scene. You are dragged by 2 guards in leopard skin kilts. The high priest reads the charges aloud. This soul-bearing subject did cast his shabut upon the divine snout of Lord Anubis at the 12th hour. Let it be known, the shadow of a slave is not equal to the breath of a god. You protest. You explain you were just following orders. You even cry a little. The priest sighs, he cries. Perhaps he believes his tears are as holy as Nile water. Punishment is declared. Your ear twitches. Goodbye, ear, you whisper. They brand your hand with a mark shaped like a crescent. Ironically, it's supposed to ward off evil. You're now both the criminal and the warning sign. By the end of the ordeal, you're not just exhausted, you're enlightened. You've learned that your body has too many parts that can offend sacred geometry. You've discovered that gods have surprisingly strict shadow etiquette. You now know that even a fleeting patch of darkness can have eternal consequences. And as you're dragged back to the work line missing one ear and reeking of ritual dung, a fellow slave leans over and whispers, "Lucky you." Last week, someone's breath touched a statue. They're still scraping him off the altar. In ancient Egypt, you had the right to remain silent, but your shadow could still get you arrested. Beauty is a crime, too hot to worship. In most cultures, beauty opens doors. In ancient Egypt, it got doors slammed shut with you on the wrong side, missing a few essential parts. Let's say you're a humble male slave. You've survived being sun-fried at noon, narrowly escaped divine punishment for casting a disrespectful shadow, and successfully avoided eye contact with anything that wears eyeliner thicker than a brick wall. But now you're facing your next existential threat. Your jawline. Yes, your symmetrical face. Those annoyingly well-shaped cheekbones and that pesky glint in your eye dangerous. Not just to the ladies, but to the very spiritual integrity of Egypt. You're carrying bricks to the temple construction site, covered in dust, sweat, and despair. Then it happens. A royal woman, maybe a priestess, maybe a noble's wife, maybe just someone rich enough to own a cat spots you. She pauses, stares, and worst of all, lingers. Suddenly, the guards around her tense up. One of them squints at you like you just winked at Ra himself. You try to look down, pretend you're a pile of mud. Too late. That one, she says, pointing. He's aesthetically distracting. Next thing you know, you're dragged behind a column. There's a scribe noting your name under the category Spiritually Disruptive Cheekbones. Then the priest declares, to restore divine order we must remove the temptation. Cue the scene going full rated R. But not for violence, no, for surgical irony. Ancient Egyptians weren't just paranoid about war or rebellion. They were obsessed with cosmic balance, what they called ma'at. Anything that disrupted that balance was a threat, even a handsome face. Especially among the slave class, physical beauty wasn't something to be admired. It was a liability. If a noblewoman got distracted, the man responsible could be accused of sorcery, seduction, or worse, disturbing divine hierarchy. Modern translation, your face makes the gods uncomfortable. We need to fix that. And fixing that often meant removing the source of the distraction. Castration was a documented punishment, in such cases, not for sex crimes, but for causing the idea of one. Worried this is just a crazy anecdote? Think again. Some religious statues in ancient Egypt had their genitals intentionally broken off, not by enemies, but by priests. Why? To prevent the gods from waking up in the night with needs. Yes, there were actual rituals where the pharaoh or priests would feed, dress, and put to sleep statues of gods. And in some temples, statues were neutered because, quote, their passions may escape during dreams. Translation: even imaginary erections were a threat to national stability. Let's put this into perspective. Imagine working in a corporate office where your boss tells you, "Sorry, Kyle, your face is too symmetrical." The finance team keeps blushing. "We're demoting you to the mailroom and also removing some equipment, just in case." Or picture a fitness influencer getting banned from the gym, not for breaking rules, but for having arms too defined, because someone else might think about them during prayer. Now, that's Egypt. If ancient Egypt had beauty regulations like a modern dress code, they'd read something like this. 1. If your eyes sparkle, distracts a priestess, prepare to lose an eye. 2. No smiling within 15 cubits of a temple. It's considered flirting with the divine. 3. If you're too symmetrical, wear a mud mask to neutralize the danger. 4. All male slaves must carry a "too hot to worship" warning tag on the back. Is it insane? Yes, Is it historically plausible more than you'd like to believe? In ancient Egypt, power dynamics weren't just rigid, they were sharpened into spears. Being born poor meant your existence was suspicious. Add physical attractiveness. Now you're not only poor, but possibly a spiritual saboteur. And worst of all, you had no say in it. You couldn't say I was just walking by. You couldn't say I didn't mean to look. You couldn't even say I'm not attractive. My mom says I look like a wet camel. Too late. If someone powerful felt unsettled by your face, that was all the court needed. Egypt wasn't all golden masks and pyramids. It was a place where fear ruled logic, and justice often meant protecting fragile feelings of the elite, especially their spiritual feelings. In a society where gods walked among mortals, at least in theory, even a glance, a shadow, or a nice jawline could be interpreted as cosmic offense. So next time you hear someone say, "Looks aren't everything," remember? In ancient Egypt, they were literally a matter of life and snip. In most places, beauty gets you a modeling deal. In Egypt, beauty got you a spiritual lobotomy. Sacred hour. Sinful steps. Even peeing could get you executed. Welcome to ancient Egypt. We have sacred cows, sacred rivers, sacred hours, and zero tolerance for your bladder. So, you've survived the sun, the stairs, and even your own shadow. You've managed not to flirt with the priestesses, kept your beautiful face hidden, and resisted casting shade on literal gods. But now your intestines are staging a revolt. You don't need water. You don't need rest. You just need a damn toilet. Except there are none. Because this is ancient Egypt, baby. Toilets haven't been invented yet. At least not for people like you, the walking meat tool with a straw skirt and a 14-hour shift. So, what do? You clutch your stomach, shuffle to a dark corner behind the temple and hope for privacy. Big mistake. Big, sacred mistake. You see that corner? That's not just a wall. That's the western wall of the Temple of Ra. And the sun, God's currently taking his divine siesta, which means no mortal is allowed near. Queue guards spotting you mid-squat, screaming like you just insulted their mother and their cat. You're dragged out by your ankles pants down mid-exit. You try to scream, "I wasn't defecating on the god. I swear I was defecating near him." But no one's laughing, except maybe the ibis bird nearby watching this all go down with judgmental eyes. Here's a little fun historical fact that's not so fun if you lived it. Ancient Egyptians believed certain hours of the day belonged solely to the gods, especially midday and twilight, when the sun was either reaching its peak or beginning its descent into the underworld. During those sacred hours, no commoner, especially not a slave, was allowed to enter certain temple areas, violating this invisible timetable. That's not just trespassing, that's spiritual espionage. And once you're caught, well, if you're lucky, they'll just exile you into the desert naked, with a dead beetle sewn into your robes. True story, it's symbolic. If you're unlucky, you'll be branded as soul-tainted and dragged to a purification chamber where priests yell prayers at you while painting your tongue with crushed copper and goat blood. Not the best Yelp review for a bathroom break. While it sounds insane, this wasn't some wild punishment made up by angry guards. There are actual records from the New Kingdom period, circa 1500 BCE, where spiritual violations of sacred zones during divine hours were punishable by public beating, ritual exile, name erasure from food registers meaning starve peasant, and yes, binding the offender with a curse amulet tied to their groin. Why there? Don't ask. Ancient Egyptian curses were oddly genital-focused. And before you scoff, modern workplaces have no entry zones too. Except if you walk into Jeff Bezos's boardroom during a private meeting, you don't get spiritually exorcised. In Egypt, even accidentally looking at the sacred dung beetle statue during Ra's nap time could get your ears blessed with fire oil. Congratulations! You just tried to poop in the holiest place in the city, at the holiest time of day. That's not indigestion. That's divine treason. Let's be honest, we've all had bad timing. Texting your boss a meme meant for your girlfriend. Farting during a job interview. Calling your teacher mom. But in ancient Egypt, bad timing was punishable by death. You sneeze during a priest's prayer heresy. You hum while walking past a sacred obelisk. Disrespect. You pee while the sun god is sleeping. Congratulations, you're now the featured soul on tonight's Sacrifice Hour with Horus. So as you're being dragged away by two guards, one holding your ankles, the other your dignity, you can't help but wonder. All I wanted was to poop in peace. Now I'm being judged by a crocodile-headed god and a man in golden eyeliner. Ancient Egypt didn't have toilet paper, but it had rules, rituals, and a very clear message. Your bladder is not more important than the divine timetable. In modern times, missing the bathroom means discomfort. In ancient Egypt, it meant your soul gets relocated to the afterlife via express shipping. The feeling of being watched. The eye of Horus is everywhere. Just when you thought the worst thing in Egypt was the heat, the whipping, or accidentally looking at a priestess's toenail. Surprise? Now you're dealing with surveillance, ancient divine surveillance. After a day filled with spiritual crimes, your shadow touched a god, your face offended a noble woman, and your bladder betrayed you during holy nap time. You drag yourself through the temple walls only to realize you're never alone. You notice something strange. Every column, every wall, every dusty slab of limestone has something in common. An eye. Not just any eye. The eye of Horus. Painted, carved, gilded, repeated like a religious Google logo. These eyes weren't decorative. They were warnings. They meant you can sin, sure, but don't expect privacy while doing it. People in ancient Egypt didn't just fear their gods, they lived under them like full-time employees on eternal probation. Horus, the sky god with the piercing falcon gaze, was said to see everything from grand treason to minor bathroom hesitations. Thought about skipping work. He knows. Yawned a little too loud near a sacred statue. He really knows. Thinking that Pharaoh's haircut is stupid. Boom sin detected. Mental note taken by divine Wi-Fi. You even heard a rumor from another slave. If you dream something inappropriate, the eye sees it, and you wake up with boils. Sleep tight. So now you live like a guilty teenager in a house full of CCTV? You don't whisper. You don't sneeze. You certainly don't daydream. You just move bricks and avoid catching the divine side-eye. Modern society talks about Big Brother watching you. Ancient Egypt. Big Falcon. Daddy is watching your soul, your outfits, and your emotional stability. Honestly, You're not sure what's worse, the whips or the psychological warfare. And as you try to sleep in your shared mud hut, one last thought keeps you up. If the gods are watching, do they know I hate my job? Evening conclusion. The sun sets, the fear remains. Sunset. Finally. A sliver of peace, right, wrong. You crawl back to your slave hut on all fours. Blood blisters on your hands, sand in your teeth, muscles crying for divine mercy. You're not walking anymore. You're leaking forward, like a sentient puddle of regret. Your body is broken, but it's your shadow that's trembling under the orange dusk. After all the chaos, it's hard to say what's more fragile, your bones or your faith in daylight survival. Then someone whispers from the next hut, "Tomorrow we start earlier. There's a royal order to finish the ramp." Ramp! The one made of hellstone and goat sweat. Great. You glance up, eyes crusty with salt and sand, and see it again. The eye of Horus, still on the pillar, still watching, still judging. You mumble to yourself, "I wonder if tomorrow I'll still have a shadow. Or will they chop that off too?" In the distance, someone gets whipped for singing the wrong hymn while pulling stones. Because yes, there are correct melodies for breaking your spine. It's here in this tender moment of dusk despair that you finally understand something deep about ancient Egypt. It wasn't just a place of gods and pyramids. It was a place where your face, your shadow, your thoughts, your timing, and your urges to pee could all get you legally executed. And yet somehow, this society built wonders that lasted 5,000 years. Maybe fear really is the greatest motivator. You lay down, close your eyes, and say a little prayer. Dear Horus, if you must judge me, please at least do it in your sleep. Being a slave in ancient Egypt isn't hard. As long as you don't have a face, a shadow, or the need to relieve yourself. Good night. You'll need the rest. Tomorrow, you might get in trouble for dreaming out of line. And just when you think the worst is over, sun gone, work done, and your spine permanently shaped like a question mark, comes the final boss of the day, bedtime. Because in ancient Egypt, night doesn't bring peace. It brings paranoia, donkey stench, and the kind of dreams that get you accused of witchcraft. Welcome to Horror Night. Sleeping requires discipline, a night in ancient Egypt. The time when the sun god Ra goes to fight demons in the underworld. And you curl up beside a donkey's butt, praying not to dream too hard. Good night in slave language. More like good luck, and may your screams stay internal. You've been assigned the old donkey shed. Technically, it's a promotion. There's straw to lie on, though it's mostly mold and you have walls. Even if one's just a leaning pile of bricks, one sneeze away from collapse. Compared to the poor sods sleeping upright in the bakery pit, you're basically in a 5-star resort. But it smells like a combination of ancient poop, wet hay, and demonic gossip. The floor is damp, the air is thick, and every time something brushes your leg, you debate whether it's a beetle, a rat, or an actual curse. In the distance, low murmurs. Is someone talking in their sleep? Or is that the ghost of a mason who died while laying bricks during last week's heat wave? You roll over. Bad idea. You're now nose-deep in something that once came out of a donkey. Welcome to bedtime in ancient Egypt. Slave quarters in ancient Egypt were often makeshift shelters, lean-tos, abandoned stalls, or shared pens with livestock. These unsanitary conditions led to widespread infections, parasitic diseases, and the occasional spiritual haunting just to spice things up. Sure, modern life is stressful, but have you ever had to fight a goat for a dry patch of dirt to sleep on while hoping your sleep-talking doesn't get you exorcised? Stay tuned. The nightmares haven't even clocked in yet. Even sleep has rules. Align your body, your soul, and your apologies to the gods. You would think after being baked under the Egyptian sun, yelled at in 3 dialects, and carrying rocks so hot they qualify as handheld volcanoes, you'd deserve a good night's sleep. Ha, that's adorable. Because in ancient Egypt, sleep was not a break. It was a spiritual minefield. Step 1. Choose your sleeping spot wisely. Or regretted it. Wetly you settle down in the old donkey shed which doubles as your luxury suite. It's got everything. Half a wall made of broken bricks. A floor that's 30% 70% donkey memories, and a soft pile of straw that's been blessed by the digestive system of several unidentified animals. You try to lie flat. You can't. There's a puddle, warm, suspiciously yellow, left by either a donkey or a cursed ghost. Either way, you instinctively roll to the left, clinging to the corner like a damp burrito. Congratulations. You've passed level 1. Avoid ancient pee. Step 2. Pick a sleeping position, or risk possession. Now comes the part where you must align yourself with the spirit world. No, this isn't yoga. It's worse. Ancient Egyptians believed that sleep was a journey of the soul, where you left your body and wandered the spirit realm. Sounds poetic, right? Until you learn that sleeping the wrong way, like on your stomach, made it easier for evil spirits to hijack your body like it's a chariot on Black Friday. So the rules are clear. Lie on your left side. Better protection for the heart. Don't cross your arms. That's a funeral pose, idiot. Don't face the wall, because that's how spirits sneak up on you. And whatever you do, don't snore. Step 3. The snore that woke a god. There's this guy in your sleeping group. Let's call him Tepi. Tepi has a talent. Not basket weaving, not stone cutting, no. Tepi is a professional snorer. At first it's funny. A few honks, a bit of wheezing. But then it escalates. His nostrils become twin trumpets of the underworld. It echoes across the shed like the opening act of the apocalypse. Suddenly, whack! The door swings open. A priest storms in robe, half-tied eyeliner slightly smudged. The sacred cat of Bastet has been awakened, he roars. You and the others are dragged out half asleep into the moonlight. Punishment, not lashes. Something worse. You must now crawl around the donkey shed 3 times to apologize to the gods for your audio sins. As you crawl through goat dung and spiritual humiliation, you make a mental note. Next time, smother Tepi with a papyrus scroll. Step 4. Night watch. But not the sexy kind back in bed. If you can call it that, you're finally drifting off. But just as your brain begins dreaming of freedom or fish or anything not shaped like a pyramid hiss, right next to your ear, you freeze. Rattlesnake demon. A cobra sent by a pharaoh you insulted in your last life you slowly turn, only to find the overseer, in full uniform, holding a whip like it's a bedtime teddy bear. "I just came to check," he whispers, smiling in the dark, who's still dreaming after curfew. Apparently, dreams are considered mental rebellion. And rebellion is, you guessed it, punishable. So now you lie still, eyes wide open, afraid to even blink in case it's misinterpreted as astral projection. Step 5. Sleep, but not too much. Let's say you survive all that. You avoid the puddles, face the right way, stay silent, dodge demons and dodge whips. You finally sleep. But if you sleep too long, that's theft. Ancient slave laws counted sleeping hours against work hours. So if you dare close your eyes for more than 5 hours, you're literally stealing from the sun, God Ra himself. Punishment? Docked rations. A public flogging. Or worst of all, having to recite the hymn to Horus naked while standing in a termite mound. The sleepwalker who died twice. One poor soul whose name was chiseled out of records made the grave mistake of sleepwalking. He stumbled out of the donkey shed, arms outstretched, muttering something like, "I am free." Except he wasn't. He was tackled by guards, shaved bald by priests, and declared spiritually contaminated. Because back then, talking in your sleep, it was evidence of demonic possession. And demonic possession equal potential traitor. What happened next? Let's just say the crocodiles in the Nile had a very satisfied midnight snack. In today's world, you snore. Your partner elbows you. You talk in your sleep. Someone makes a TikTok. Chanto, you oversleep. Your boss passive-aggressively sends a Slack message. In ancient Egypt, you snore, you offend gods. You talk, you're possessed. You oversleep, you're executed for time theft. Basically, bedtime in ancient Egypt was less Netflix and chill, more Netflix and be still or die. So the next time you whine about your mattress being too soft or the air conditioning being too loud, remember, in ancient Egypt, the only real dream was to survive the night without being spiritually assaulted or donkey adjacent. Sleep tight, just not too tight. You never know who's listening. Dreaming equals treason. If you thought surviving the sleeping Olympics TM of ancient Egypt just meant lying still and not peeing yourself, think again, because now we enter the real danger zone, your own subconscious. After mastering the sacred position of not rolling into donkey pee and surviving the nightly divine snoring trials, you finally drift off into the soothing void of sleep. Big mistake. Because in ancient Egypt, sleep wasn't just rest. It was a spiritual battleground. And the first casualty, your civil rights, sleep talking, more like spirit whispering. You mutter something in your sleep, maybe it's gibberish, or maybe it's, "I wish I had garlic bread." Unfortunately for you, the guard on night duty thinks you said the name of a forbidden deity. And just like that, you're yanked upright by your ankles, eyes still half closed, while the guard demands to know why you're conspiring with Set at 3 a.m. Yes, talking in your sleep wasn't just awkward, it was potential evidence of divine treason. In the Egyptian mind, dreams were messages from the gods. So if you were spouting nonsense, clearly one of two things had happened. A demon was squatting in your soul, Or worse, you were listening to the wrong God. Either way, you now had a target on your spiritual forehead. Sleepwalking, congratulations, you're possessed. Let's talk about poor Hekanacht. At some point during the night, he stood up, wandered out of the donkey shed, and walked in circles humming what may or may not have been a hymn to Bastet. Harmless right-wrong, because in ancient Egypt, sleepwalking was not a disorder. It was possession. By sunrise, Hekanacht was being shaved completely bald to expose the demonic portals on the scalp. Rubbed with garlic oil and hippo fat, don't ask, and branded with protective amulets that looked suspiciously like someone smearing goose blood on his chest while chanting insults at the sky. He was then forbidden from sleeping in the same place twice for the next 10 days, so the demon couldn't find his body again. To be fair, the logic was consistent. Just horrifying. Dream logs, because nothing says freedom like sleep surveillance. In the corner of the work hut, nailed next to a tally of bricks made and buckets vomited, hangs a strange artifact, the dream logbook. Yes, your dreams are being tracked. If a scribe heard you mutter bread too many times, it might be logged as greedy spirit influence. Dreamed of home attachment disorder. Dreamed of freedom, political subversion. Worse still, if you slept longer than 5 hours, the overseer might log you as stealing state time. In some cases, this was punishable with public head dunking in a frog-infested cistern, removal from the evening meal schedule, or in more spiritual circles, a mandatory exorcism by temple interns who failed priest school. Dreams were holy, but also weaponized. The Egyptians believed dreams were powerful. Temples had special rooms called dream chambers, where high-ranking priests would sleep to receive visions from the gods. But you're a slave. So, if you dreamed of anything that didn't align with the temple's official playlist, congratulations, you were probably infected by an unapproved spirit, and might soon be visited by a man with a bucket of holy dung and a brush. Some dreams were even criminalized. In the tombs of Thebes, an actual clay tablet records a law stating, if a laborer dreams of Ra's chariot crashing, he shall be questioned for prophetic sedition. That's right. A bad dream could be a crime against the sun. Nightmares. Try night wrongs. So here you are, lying on a bed of straw, the air filled with donkey farts and ancient curses, trying desperately not to think too hard while falling asleep, because your thoughts might leak out of your mouth, summon a deity, insult the wrong spirit, or imply that you want your freedom. Good luck with that. Just remember, don't talk, don't dream weird, don't snore, don't move, don't sleep too long, and above all, don't let your soul wander without permission, because in ancient Egypt, even your dreams could betray you. In the modern world, if you dream of flying, people say you're creative. In ancient Egypt, they'd say you're possessed by a hawk demon and dunk you in sacred onions. Sleep tight, not a dream, but a nightmare. So you survived the spirit-sniffing guards, the demon-chasing night shifts, and the snooze log of doom. You finally shut your eyes, pretending not to exist, praying to every god in the pantheon, including the unofficial ones like Bob, the god of Don't Wake Me Up. You're on the brink of rest, caught between micro-naps and existential dread when it happens. A scream. A guttural, panic-drenched scream that slices through the hot, thick darkness like a flaming machete made of pure fear. Someone's trying to escape. The ground thunders with sandaled feet. The night once filled with rhythmic snoring and donkey flatulence erupts into chaos. The guards storm in a small army of torch-bearing lunatics, eyes gleaming with suspicion, sweat, and crocodile-shaped trauma. You poor fool had simply turned over in your sleep. Your back was cramping from the unforgiving straw mattress and 15 hours of hauling limestone. One small twist of the hip, and boom. Now you're public enemy number one. Within seconds, you're pinned down like a cursed beetle, arms behind your back, knees in your spine, and a torch so close to your face you can smell your eyebrows crisping. Where were you going, slave? Your mouth opens. You want to say, "I was dreaming of bread, you psychopath." But all that comes out is a confused, terrified gurgle. Doesn't matter. You've just won a 3-hour interrogation package. Congratulations. You're dragged into a corner of the workyard, lit up like a stage. 2 guards stand over you with ceremonial whips, which is just a fancy way of saying leather with malice. No one offers water. No one asks if you're okay. Instead, they begin the interview process. Question 1. Did you plan to escape? Question 2. Who helped you? Question 3. Why do you hate the pharaoh? You try to explain you were dreaming about soup. This somehow makes things worse. The more confused you sound, the guiltier you look. In ancient Egypt, incoherence was evidence. For each unsatisfactory answer, a new welt blooms across your back. The whip sings a song of pain, and it's always in a minor key. Eventually, a priest shows up not to offer mercy, but to confirm you weren't cursed or possessed. He sniffs you, literally, checks your eyelids, mumbles to a stone amulet, and declares he's not spiritually unstable, just twitchy. You think this is your ticket to freedom. But then comes the verbal death sentence from the captain of the guard. He's lucky the crocodiles ate yesterday. Otherwise, he'd be swimming to Duat by now. Yes, that's not a metaphor. Runaway slaves were often thrown into the Nile as snacks for the crocodiles. And they didn't always have to run far. Sometimes suspicion was enough. That means you just avoided becoming dinner by 12 hours. Good job, back pain. Your release is less of a freedom and more of a warning. The guards let you go battered and shaken and point to a horrifying sight hanging by the watchtower. A corpse. Or maybe still alive. It's hard to tell. Hung upside down by the ankles, eyes wide open, flies orbiting like priests at a funeral. This was someone who actually tried to escape, or at least convinced the wrong guard he did. This punishment wasn't just physical. It was spiritual exposure. Being hung upside down was believed to disorient the soul, allowing the gods to peek into your guilt, while the buzzards peeked into your intestines. A literal case of airing your dirty karma. Some slaves would hang like that until they died of dehydration, snakebite, or pure humiliation. And the rest of you, you'd sleep a little stiffer that night, just in case. Crocodiles were sacred in some parts of Egypt, but in labor camps, they were security guards with scales and teeth. Guards would smear fish guts on the shoreline to train the crocs to patrol like slimy, toothy drones. If a slave went missing, they'd check the riverbanks for divine intervention. Translation: blood limbs or sandals. Sometimes they didn't even need proof. One slave famously disappeared after being caught thinking too hard after sundown. His body was never found, but they still threw his bedding into the river to confuse the evil spirit. And the lesson: don't think, don't dream, don't roll over, especially not near the water. When they finally dump you back on your hay pile, you're not just exhausted, you're transformed. No longer a person with dreams or emotions, just a twitchy, shivering mound of meat trying not to get noticed by the stars. Your cellmates eye you with equal parts pity and fear. One offers you a fig. You try to smile, but your lips are too swollen to stretch. You close your eyes. But now you don't dare sleep. Because in ancient Egypt, nightmares weren't something you had. They were something you survived. And tonight, survival came with welts, water threats, and the warm reminder that even the Nile was watching. In modern prisons, there are security cameras. In ancient Egypt, they had crocodiles with perfect night vision. Sweet dreams. No rest for the possessed. Tired means your curse. Just when you think the worst is over, that the screams have died down, the crocodiles have gone back to snacking on fish instead of fugitives, and the guards are finally done playing Who Wants to Whip a Slave. You feel it. That heaviness in your eyes, that gentle head tilt, that sweet temptation called sleep. You yawn. Fatal mistake. Oi, hisses the guy next to you, whose name you never caught, because no one here bothers with introductions unless it's to report you. Don't sleep without permission, idiot. Do you want to wake up bald and cursed? You blink. Permission to sleep. He nods seriously. You gotta ask the dream gods first. And if you forget to do the ritual, they'll think your soul is open real estate for evil spirits. That's how Uncle Hotep got possessed and started licking bricks. You were going to make a sarcastic comment, but honestly, after the night you've had licking bricks seems fairly normal. You try to stay awake. You really do. But your eyelids are fighting back like tiny sandbags, and the warm animal breath in this overcrowded hut isn't helping. Someone next to you is drooling. Another is snoring in Morse code. The straw beneath you smells like fermented goat. Finally, your body gives in. And just as your soul begins its gentle descent into the realm of dreams, a torch lights up your face. Standing above you is the high priestess from the temple next door. She's wrapped in linen painted in enough eyeliner to qualify as a raccoon and holding a bronze amulet that looks suspiciously like a frying pan. I felt a ripple in the energy field, she says. Someone here has dreamt unauthorized thoughts. Everyone in the hut sits up like school kids during a surprise quiz. You try to play dead. It doesn't work. She points directly at you. Have you or have you not dreamt of anything untraceable? What you mumble. I was just resting my eyes. Oh, ho, ho, she croons ominously. That's how the demons enter. 2 temple aides grab you and start sniffing your hair. She smells tired, one whispers. Too tired, says the other. Maybe cursed. Before you can protest, they're already shaving your head. Not with razors, but with seashells. You look like an egg that's been in a bar fight. Then they paint a little blue scarab on your forehead. For spiritual quarantine, they explain, and shove a clove of garlic in your mouth. You're not sure if it's for the demons or your breath. As you're pushed back into the corner, your bunkmate mutters, "Could have been worse." One guy sneezed in his sleep and got tossed into the Nile. They said the sneeze came from his inner serpent. In ancient Egypt, sleep wasn't just sleep. It was a divine ritual. Every nap was a mini-death, a spiritual journey where your soulka visited other realms. If you didn't properly prepare, say, by muttering the correct protective incantation or sleeping in the wrong position, you risked letting demons hitch a ride back into your body. Dreams were monitored, discussed, even documented. There were priests whose entire job was to interpret what you saw in your sleep and determine if it meant you were a prophet or a problem. But the real kicker, there's an actual sleep log nailed to the entrance of your slave quarters. A papyrus scroll marked with tally lines guarded by a grumpy scribe who records every shut-eye incident longer than 5 minutes. And if you're caught sleeping off schedule, it's not called nap time. It's called stealing hours from Pharaoh. A capital offense punishable by beatings, curse cleansing, or being made to wash the high priest's undergarments with your tears. By now, you're sitting cross-legged, eyes wide open, teeth clenched around your anti-demon garlic. You dare not blink too long, lest someone accuses your eyelids of heresy. You whisper to your bunkmate, "How the hell do people survive this?" He shrugs. Most don't. That's why the afterlife has such long queues. In today's world, if you oversleep, your boss sends a passive-aggressive email. In ancient Egypt, you oversleep, and a priestess with a magical ladle shaves your head, brands your soul, and asks if you've spoken to demons recently. So next time you hit snooze, say a little prayer to Bastet, because back then, tired wasn't an excuse. Tired meant you were haunted. Nap time equals spiritual radio broadcast. So you've survived the garlic chewing, the forced insomnia, and the humiliation of being shaved with clamshells. You think, all right, I'll just keep my mouth shut and survive the night. Ha, how cute. Because in ancient Egypt, the problem isn't just you sleeping. The real danger, you sleep-talking. Around midnight, someone in the corner begins to moan in his sleep. Nothing dramatic. Just a low, weary groan. Instant chaos. The guards burst in like they've heard an assassination plot. Who was it they barked, torches blazing? Who dared open a spiritual transmission line without clearance? The man jolts awake, confused, still half dreaming. I was just having a nightmare. Too late. The guards drag him out. You were transmitting messages to the afterlife without state permission. That's illegal under the Sacred Dreaming Act. A girl nearby whispers, "This happens every week. One time my cousin laughed in her sleep, just laughed, and they accused her of communicating with Amun-Ra's court jester." You swallow hard. That was a moan. You tend to mumble when you nap. You once gave your entire Wi-Fi password out in your sleep. If you'd been born in Thebes, that alone would have gotten you sentenced to 30 lashes for unauthorized spiritual leakage. But it gets worse. Later in the night, someone mutters the word pharaoh in his sleep. Everyone freezes. The hut goes dead silent. Even the rats stop squeaking. Then, slap, a matron slaps him across the face. "You're not worthy enough to dream about the king," she hisses. "You think your filthy subconscious gets royal access." The boy sobs quietly into his straw bed. Suddenly, the wind shifts. The cloth that normally covers the doorway blows open. Oh. A night patrol peeks in, and just in time to catch another slave yawning. Loudly. Too loudly. "Oi!" the soldier yells. That yawn exceeded the legal volume for nighttime breath expulsion. "Come with me?" "What?" "It's just a yawn. Don't you dare raise your voice. That's 2 offenses. Let's go." Ancient Egyptian dream records were real. Priests and scribes kept dream books in which slaves' nighttime murmurs were recorded and interpreted. These weren't diary entries, they were legal documents. A suspicious dream could be used as evidence in trial, especially if you dreamt about snake's fire or anything unpatriotic like a pharaoh dying or someone overthrowing a god. By dawn, there's a list pinned outside the hut titled Nighttime Violations. It includes yawn exceeding 6 seconds, 2 lashes, mumbling Pharaoh's name, 1 week without bread, dreaming of escape suspected, pending interrogation, and most chillingly, Subject X, full removal for spirit purification. You don't know who Subject X is, but someone's bedroll is empty. You sit frozen back against the wall, daring not to sneeze, cough, or even twitch wrong. Every breath could be seen as a coded message from the underworld. Your bunkmate leans in and whispers, "There's a reason most of us sleep with our mouths stuffed with cloth. Not for warmth, for survival." You nod slowly, wrapping your own rag tighter around your jaw. Because here, sleep is not rest. It's a test, a trap, a courtroom of whispering ghosts. But some people, they don't pass the test. Some people don't wake up, ever. The ones who never woke up. In a place where dreams can get you executed, what happens to those who dream too loudly, or dream of freedom? They vanish, and the others pretend not to notice. Because in ancient Egypt, sleep isn't just sacred. It's dangerous. You wake up, or rather, you check that you've woken up. Because the first thing you do each morning as a slave in ancient Egypt is count. 1, 2, 3. No, wait. Where's number 4? The bundle of rags in the corner gone. No trace. Just an indent in the dirt where someone slept last night. Now they don't. You nudge the person next to you. Did he get reassigned? She shakes her head without making eye contact. No one gets reassigned at night. Then leans in, whispers. He mumbled something about flying in his sleep. That's it. And just like that, he's gone. It happens all the time. A cough, a twitch, a dream about floating. All it takes is one misunderstood noise, one unlucky exhale, and someone disappears by sunrise. There are rumors, of course. Some say the pharaoh's priests sacrifice them to Sobek, the crocodile god, hoping a fresh soul will bring peace to the sleepless others. Others say they're just dragged off to work in the invisible pits, where no food is given and no one ever returns. One old man muttered once, "They're taken to dreamless sleep forever," and then he vanished the next day. Coincidence? Nobody dares ask. You stop mentioning names. You stop asking questions. You even stop yawning. It's just safer that way. Because here, even your silence must be politically correct. One slave, just 12 years old, sang in his sleep once. Nothing rebellious. Just hummed the tune of a lullaby his mother used to sing before she sold him. In the morning, the guards came with a rope. Unauthorized cultural retention, they said. He never returned. In ancient Egypt, dreams were state business. Royal priests interpreted them as prophecies, warnings, or signs of rebellion. Even a dream you didn't understand could be seen as evidence of harboring seditious thoughts. For slaves, this meant constant surveillance, even in sleep. Some were punished not for action, but for imagined intent. Because if your dreams showed disloyalty, then clearly your soul was already guilty. Eventually, you stop sleeping altogether. Your body wants to rest, but your mind won't allow it. Not here. Not when the wrong dream can mean your death. The ones who do sleep. They either wake up screaming or don't wake up at all. And the worst part, no one mourns. They can't. Grief looks suspicious. It implies attachment. Attachment implies memory. Memory implies testimony. So instead, you all forget, or pretend to, because in ancient Egypt, sleep isn't a right. It's a privilege. And if you mess it up, you pay for it with your life. Morning comes, but your soul hasn't returned yet. A new day, same nightmare. Dawn breaks not gently, not warmly, but like a slap in the face from the gods themselves. You're not sure if you actually slept or just blacked out from exhaustion. Either way, the result is the same. Your limbs are numb, your stomach is cramping, and your head feels like it's been cursed. You groan as you sit up. Bad move. 3 joints pop. Your spine screams. Your soul possibly left the chat. But you can't rest. No one can. The bell sounds. Time to line up and carry rocks like nothing happened. Welcome to another day in paradise. As you stumble toward the quarry, dragging your aching body behind you, someone whispers in your ear. It's the guy who sleeps 2 mats away. He leans close and says, "You breathed loud last night." You freeze. He nods solemnly. "I was scared for you." You want to laugh or cry, but there's no energy left for either. You simply nod back and keep moving, praying the dream sniffers didn't hear you exhale wrong. In the distance, over the dry wind and the clatter of chains, you can hear the priest again. Same chant every morning. If you saw a strange light in your dreams, come confess now. Nobody moves. Nobody ever moves. You all know what confession means. Confession means guilt. And guilt means sacrifice. And sacrifice feeds the crocodiles. You take your place at the end of the rock line, and the sun hits your face like a hot slap. The day has started. But you haven't. Not really. Your body is moving, but your spirit is still hiding somewhere too traumatized to show up. You try to remember what day it is, but time here is just a blur between lashes and hallucinations. Just another morning, another test, another round of survive if you can. Sleep in ancient Egypt wasn't rest. It wasn't escape. It was an exam. A nightly trial of loyalty and silence. One dream too loud, one breath too sharp, and you're gone. So if you somehow make it to the next morning, congratulations. But don't get too comfortable, because here even dreams can kill. And waking up doesn't mean you're safe. Good luck, and for Ra's sake, try not to breathe too loudly tonight. The return of Shitty Amun. Do you think your job is hard? Greetings, honored audience, or at least whatever remains of you after watching this historical horror show. If you're still alive after spending 24 hours as a slave in ancient Egypt, congratulations. And if you're not, well, good news. You no longer have to do overtime. Ever again. Let's do a quick recap, shall we? In just one single day, you've been whipped awake at 4 a.m. with a jug of water, took a bath in mosquito soup, ate bread that doubled as a construction material, dodged sacred shadows, hauled blocks hotter than Ra's buttocks, and got interrogated for snoring spiritually incorrect dreams. And somehow, you still envy your cat's life more than your own. But hey, modern life isn't easy either, right? You've got meetings that could have been emails. Emails that should have stayed unread, and coffee so burnt it qualifies as an offering to set. Still, before you complain about how your keyboard is sticky, let me ask, have you ever been punished for breathing too loud in your sleep? Have you ever eaten a sandwich so dry it qualified as gravel with yeast? Ever had your boss scream lazy while you're bleeding from a nose sunburn? Or better yet, ever been evicted from your bed because your shadow gave a statue bad vibes? No? Then I hate to break it to you, but you're not working hard. Me, I once got a promotion because the guy ahead of me died of dehydration-induced hallucinations. My bonus, not being next. And let me tell you, in ancient Egypt, performance reviews aren't annual. They're hourly, and conducted by a guy holding a stick, a scroll, and absolutely no chill. So, dear viewers, before we move on, take a deep breath while you still can stretch those limbs if they're still attached and reflect. Because what you've just survived wasn't just a history lesson, it was spiritual cardio. Now, let's talk about you. Yes, you. The one still complaining about their job, their boss, their open-plan office, and the 3-ply toilet paper being downgraded to 2. Because unless your daily struggle involves praying not to be sacrificed in your sleep, I suggest you hold your complaints until we finish this survival test. Coming up next, we'll check your personal slave survival score. Spoiler alert. If you still have all your teeth, you might already be in the top 10%. Shitty Amun is watching and judging. All right, folks. You've made it this far. Still breathing, still clinging to your dignity with one cracked fingernail. Good, because it's time for a little game. I like to call Have You Ever Spoiler. You probably haven't. Let's begin. Have you ever eaten a loaf of bread so dry it doubled as an exfoliating sponge? No, then you've never tasted Egyptian sand bread. The only meal that comes with free dental destruction. We didn't lose our teeth. We chewed them into the afterlife. And let me tell you, when your bread crunches louder than your shovel, something's terribly wrong. Have you ever shoveled cow dung with your bare hands under 45 degrees while someone yelled, "Faster, peasant, still no lucky you"? Because back in my day, moisturizing meant hoping the dung was fresh enough to be soft. We didn't get gloves. We were the gloves. Have you ever been tucked in at night with a whip? Ah yes, The gentle bedtime routine of every Egyptian slave. Step 1. Lay on a dirt floor. Step 2. Curl up next to your one possession, your suffering. Step 3. Receive a goodnight lash for sleeping too early without permission. Sleep tight. Don't let the overseer bite. Have you ever been kicked out of bed because your shadow offended a god? No, never lost your bed because your silhouette disrespected a divine statue's aura. Then you haven't truly known rejection. Try explaining to your boss that your shadow didn't mean it. Oh wait, you can't. You're now sleeping in the sandpit next to the scorpion nest. Have you ever been hung upside down for breathing too hard at night? Because apparently in ancient Egypt, snoring equals rebellion. Even a single nostril whistle was considered an anti-pharaoh conspiracy. We called it nighttime treason. You called it sleep apnea. Have you ever prayed for diarrhea just so you could leave work early? Because if you had a stomach bug, you might get 10 minutes off. But careful, if you shat too loudly, it might wake the gods. Then it's another punishment. Have you ever watched someone get whipped for blinking too slowly because lazy eyelids were a real offense? The rule was simple. If the master blinked, you blinked faster. If not, you're napping, and naps get lashes. So now I ask you, still hate your office job? Still think your boss is the worst thing since gluten? Still moaning about slow Wi-Fi or the lack of almond milk at the company pantry? Because unless you've shared your bed with a beetle colony, dug ditches with your face, or been whipped by moonlight, then you haven't suffered. If you answered no to all of the above, congratulations. You've never been a slave in ancient Egypt. And frankly, you owe us a thank you. Next time you feel overworked, underpaid, or mildly inconvenienced by your standing desk, just remember I once lost a coworker to sunstroke, got promoted, and didn't even get a raise, just a second loincloth. That's what we call career growth, baby. Ready for your survival ranking in Part 3. Time to see how many of your teeth and pieces of soul you still have. In ancient Egypt, you don't get promoted. You get ascended, as in dead. So you made it, or at least your bones did. After 24 hours. 4 hours of sand in places, sand should never go back. Breaking labor lizard-infested breakfast, and a boss who believes shouting is a leadership style. Congratulations, you technically survived. But surviving as a slave in ancient Egypt isn't a simple binary. It's not just alive or dead. No, this is Egypt. Everything comes with a hierarchy, including your suffering. So let's take a moment as the sun threatens to rise again to see where you fall on the grand cosmic leaderboard of survival. Think of it less like a performance review and more like a spiritual autopsy. At the lowest rung of still technically breathing, we have the poor souls who started the day with bread so solid it could double as roofing material and somehow miraculously didn't lose a molar. If your teeth remain intact after gnawing on what was essentially limestone with sesame seeds, then you've already achieved something most slaves couldn't boast the ability to chew and scream in pain at the same time. Dentists didn't exist, but hey, neither did anesthesia. So kudos, you're a tooth guardian now. If you made it past breakfast without cracking a tooth, or your will to live, you moved on to another minefield religious etiquette. Specifically, not offending the gods by accidentally letting your shadow touch a statue. Because apparently, divine stonework has boundaries. If your clumsy silhouette dared to brush the toe of a holy idol that wasn't just disrespect, that was blasphemy with a capital B, punishable by forced confession lashes or being turned into an offering yourself. So if your shadow behaved all day and didn't get you killed, congrats. You're a shadow diplomat now. Smooth, subtle, and slightly terrified of the sun. Now let's talk about sleep. If you can call what you did last night rest, more like a horizontal panic attack, because in ancient Egypt, even breathing too loudly while sleeping could be seen as disruptive. If your overseer had insomnia and heard you snore, that's it. Whip to the ribs. Maybe an ear goes missing. If you survived the night by learning how to inhale silently, exhale like a ghost, and clutch your dreams like they were contraband, welcome. You've earned the title of respiratory ninja, the lungs of a whisper, the stealth of a traumatized monk. And then, at the summit of the survival ladder, there are the true masters, the elite, the pride survivors. You know who you are. You made it to dawn, with both ears still attached to your spine, mostly unbroken, and a tiny shred of dignity clinging to your soul like the last dry leaf in a sandstorm. You didn't cry in public. You didn't get caught dreaming of freedom. You didn't lose your tongue for answering too slowly. You endured silently, invisibly. That, my friend, is not just survival. That is art. But not everyone made it, did they? Some of your fellow slaves were less lucky. Maybe they sneezed during a sacred ritual. Maybe they tripped in front of a scribe. Maybe they had a bad dream about the pharaoh and accidentally mumbled it out loud. Whoops! That's a one-way ticket to the crocodile pit. In Egypt, death didn't always come from exhaustion. Sometimes it came from an eyebrow twitch. So as we close this grim little scoreboard, let's reflect. This wasn't a contest. This was a filter, a sieve through which only the quietest, toughest, and most invisibly obedient slaves passed through. No prizes, no medals, just another sunrise and the privilege of doing it all over again. In ancient Egypt, you didn't move up the ranks. You moved into the afterlife. No promotions, just funerals. And the only exit interview you got was your organs being pulled out through your nose and buried in separate jars. So I ask you again, dear time traveler, dear pampered soul of the 21st century, still think your 9 to 5 is unbearable? Still mad about office Wi-Fi? At least your boss doesn't beat you for sleep talking. At least your breakfast didn't try to break your jaw. And at least when your shadow moves, no one accuses you of treason. So tell me, after all this, what would your survival rank be? Me, oh, I'm Shitty Amun. I died at level 0, sneezed near a sacred goose, didn't even see the whip coming, and now I narrate from the afterlife. Shall we move on to the final part? The audience game, Reverse Complaints. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where your dream of quiet quitting is just quitting, quietly, permanently. All right, my poor modern souls, it's time for a little game I like to call Reverse Complaints. Here's how it works. You whine, and I humiliate you. You moan about your life, and I show you what real suffering looks like 3,000 years ago, with a shovel in one hand and dysentery in the other. Let's begin. You. My boss is so controlling. I can't even breathe without getting a Slack notification. Me. Oh, honey, my boss was a corpse. Literally. A decaying pharaoh whose orders were carved into limestone a decade ago. But guess what? Still expected me to show up on time, whip in my back and all. No emails, just screams. You, I hate Excel. Me, I hate scrubbing communal toilets with cracked fingernails and no gloves. I hate being elbow-deep in ancient poop while rats run by like they own the place. Pivot tables. Try pivoting your spine while dragging 80 kilos of bricks under the sun. You, I need a break. Just 3 days off. Me, oh, I dreamed of the sea once. Just dreamed, mind you, not asked for a vacation. And suddenly, I was accused of plotting escape. 2 lashes and a lecture about loyalty to the Nile. Your PTO request is a cosmic joke to me. You sleep is so important for my mental health. Me, yes. Sleep. That mythical concept. In my day, if you dared to nap without first praying to 6 different gods, lighting incense, and facing northeast on a crocodile skin mat, you were accused of insulting Ra himself. People disappeared for snoring. You, I don't feel fulfilled at work. Me, neither did I. While hauling 200-pound blocks to build a tomb, I wasn't even allowed to look at. I wasn't unfulfilled. I was dehydrated, sunburnt, and ankle-deep in snake holes. You want fulfillment. Try surviving. You, I feel like my coworkers are toxic. Me, my coworkers were literally toxic. Covered in lead dust, sneezing up black phlegm and dropping dead mid-shift. And I still had to cover their workload after they died. You've got Carol from accounting. I had Seti, who once bit a rat in half for lunch. You, the office lighting gives me headaches. Me, I worked under Ra himself, unfiltered on max brightness. No sunscreen, no shade, just eye-scorching daylight and a faint hope of not catching fire. You're complaining about fluorescent tubes. Adorable. You, I think my job is killing me. Me, mine actually did. I died at 28. Cause of death, exhaustion, dehydration, and one badly timed fart during a temple ceremony. You still breathing. Then no, your job isn't killing you. Yet. So my sweet modern gladiators of the 9 to 5, here's the truth. You're not oppressed. You're just slightly inconvenienced. You don't need a raise. You need perspective. You don't need a vacation. You need a time machine to come shovel donkey dung beside me for 1 hour. That'll cure your burnout. But go on. Tell me again how your office ran out of oat milk, how your Wi-Fi cut out during a Zoom call, how you couldn't focus because Karen microwaved fish. Let it all out. I'll be here dead wrapped in linen, still laughing. Because in the end, you didn't survive ancient Egypt. You wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. Game over. Now, do you want to really complain, or are you ready for the final test? Message from the underworld, from 6 feet under, with love. So, you're still here. Brave, aren't you? Or maybe just too stunned to leave. Either way, since you've made it this far through sunstroke snakes and spiritual HR violations, I owe you a final word from the other side. Let me tell you something, friend. If you think your boss today is a tyrant, If you think they're overbearing, controlling, maybe even a little unhinged, let me introduce you to mine. He was already dead. Dead. In a gold-stuffed coffin, surrounded by incense and sycophants. And yet we still called him Master. Still hauled 2-ton stones across burning sand just to build a tomb so majestic, so unnecessarily tall, it made my own sense of dignity look microscopic. I worked for a man who hadn't blinked in a decade. And guess what? I still got whipped for being late. You talk about retirement plans. Mine was simple: die on the job, ideally face down in the mud before the crocodiles got too curious. Work-life balance. My bones were the balance. They put me in the wall next to the boss's tomb. It's poetic, really. He got immortality. I got a hernia. And you complain about your manager being passive-aggressive in emails. Try being haunted by the ghost of a pharaoh because you stacked his bricks an inch too low. Ever seen a spirit in a rage? Terrifying. Especially one wearing eyeliner. So next time you feel burnt out because of deadlines, remember me. I had real deadlines, as in digging graves for someone already dead, using the only tool I had left my life. And now I rest, but not in peace. No too many skeletons to mock, too many modern souls to roast. So whenever you're tempted to cry over a bad Zoom call or a missing lunch break, smile. Because, at least, you're not building someone else's afterlife. Good night, mortals. Shitty Amun. Out. Sinister chuckle. External story. So, I just survived 24 hours in ancient Egypt as a slave. I thought the worst part would be pulling rocks and dodging whips. Wrong. The real trauma, the people, the smells, the beauty standards that made me want to peel my own eyeballs. Before I time traveled, I had this fantasy: Cleopatra elegance, silky linen dresses, golden jewelry, a Nile breeze softly kissing my cheek as I sipped pomegranate wine. Instead, my first beautiful Egyptian woman looked like she'd lost a fight with a box of crayons and a goat. No eyebrows, eyeshadow, bright green like radioactive algae, a giant cone of animal fat melting on her head. And her perfume, raw onion and armpit dreams. I'm not even being mean. That's the culture. They believed strong smells warded off evil, so everyone basically marinated themselves in garlic incense, and what I'm 80% sure was expired hummus. And the men, they were just as spicy, sweaty loincloths, coal-lined eyes, like ancient emo boys, and breath that smelled like a tomb full of fermented lentils. I came for royalty. I got body odor bugs and the knowledge that nipple piercings were normal for babies. So yeah, if the gods sent me back here to learn a lesson, I got it: never trust ancient aesthetics. Cleopatra was hot because everyone else smelled like soup and looked like a cursed NFT. And that was just hour 1. 2. Definition of beauty. Modern baddies, just amateurs. Sweetie, approx 750-800 words. Dark humor. Gen Z POV. Let's get one thing straight. Everything I thought I knew about beauty lies. Instagram models, influencers, makeup, gurus with ring lights and 40-step skincare routines. Amateurs. Try surviving ancient Egypt, where true beauty meant turning your face into an ancient horror filter and doing it proudly. You think cat eyes are trendy now. Back then, eyeliner wasn't just winged, it was extended all the way to your damn ears. They didn't do subtle. They did draw a line so long it enters the afterlife before you do. Apparently, the more your eyes looked like a stretched-out falcon, the sexier you were. Cleopatra didn't slay. She smudged coal around her eyes and threatened people with eyeliner sharp enough to stab a priest. Now, let's talk about skin tone goals. In today's world, people chase that sun-kissed glow. In ancient Egypt, sickly greenish-blue skin equal elite. That's because they slathered their faces with malachite powder, a crushed-up copper-based mineral that not only gave you a nice zombie hue, but also slowly poisoned you over time. Looking like a fashionable corpse. That's how you knew she was high class. Eyebrows, cute idea. But in ancient Egypt, no eyebrows equals peak hotness. They shaved them off completely. I don't know why. Maybe they believed having visible brows meant you had thoughts, and that was too radical for the time. Oh, and if you were lucky enough to be born with hair. Sorry, you still had to shave it all off and wear a wig. Not a fun, colorful anime con wig. No, these wigs were made from real human hair, often from dead people, and soaked in animal fat to condition them. Imagine getting cozy with someone and realizing their luscious locks smell like beef stew and embalming oil. And the smell? Oh, honey. Everyone in ancient Egypt smelled. But not like gym socks or subway armpits. No, they smelled expensively bad. Their idea of perfume was mixing incense musk and rotting fish with a hint of melted goat butter. Because nothing says romance like someone leaning in for a kiss and hitting you with the scent of grilled tilapia dipped in Chanel No. 5. And you know how modern beauty trends change every few years? Ancient Egypt didn't have that problem. They found their recipe for sexy and committed hard for thousands of years. Even mummies were buried with makeup kits, just in case they had a hot date in the underworld. But wait, it gets worse. Some people wore perfume cones on their heads. Literal cones made of animal fat and scented oils designed to melt throughout the day and drip down their wigs like a fragrant slime trail. I kid you not. By sunset, you'd look like a wax statue left in the sun. And yet, that was the height of attractiveness. Modern dating apps ask for star signs. Ancient Egyptians, they wanted to know your scent profile. Hi, I'm Nefru. I'm 23. I worship Ra. I'm into eyeliner incense and slow-melting head grease. Even their teeth were cursed. Bread back then was basically sand with carbs. By 30, most people had 0 molars left, but they still smiled like it was cute. Beauty may be pain, but here it was also bleeding gums and mouth ulcers. Honestly, by the end of my first hour, I had seen enough to want to gouge my eyes out with a coal stick. But I couldn't because they were too busy dripping malachite sweat into my corneas. Look, I'm not saying our generation is perfect. We invented TikTok dances and gender reveal explosions. But compared to ancient Egyptian baddies, we are innocent. We are soft. We are Febreze in human form. Back then, beautiful meant bald painted and pickled in goat juice. Green face of death equals elegant. No eyebrows, no problem. Hair from grandma's corpse. Sure, breath like a fermented salad, even hotter. And if someone told you you smell like grilled onions and warm wax, you didn't call a doctor. You called that a compliment. So next time you complain about modern beauty pressure, remember, at least no one's pouring pig fat on your scalp and calling it sexy. 3. Ancient flirting. Modern love has Tinder. Ancient love had onions. 700, 800 words. Gen Z. POV, dark humor, historically absurd. So by now I had accepted that in ancient Egypt, beauty meant looking like a radioactive candle and smelling like a goat's armpit. Naturally, I started wondering, how did people fall in love here? Surely something poetic, right? Pyramids poetry, Nile sunsets. Wrong. So wrong. First off, forget roses. In ancient Egypt, if someone liked you, they didn't send flowers, they sent you a raw onion. Yep, onion equals love. It symbolized fertility, passion, and also served as natural deodorant, because apparently nothing says marry me like a vegetable that makes your eyes water and your breath smell like regret. Still single. Step it up. Why not toss a papier-mâché dung beetle at your crush? No, really. Scarabs were sacred. So wrapping one in papyrus with a little love poem and hurling it at someone's head. That was ancient flirting at its peak. Think of it as the Egyptian version of, "Hey girl, you up plus beetle to the face." If they didn't block you on hieroglyphic. Twitter, congratulations, you're dating. So what did dates look like? Fancy dinner by candlelight. Try this. You and your lover sit by a swampy canal chewing lotus petals, sipping on barley beer that tastes like fermented toast water, and watching hippos poop in the distance. And yet, people wrote love poems about this. Actual Egyptian lines included, "Your voice is like a goose. I long to hear it. She is more beautiful than beer." And the all-time classic, "You smell like the Nile in flood season." Excuse me? The Nile in flood season smells like wet dirt, dead fish, and possibly 2.5 corpses. But in ancient Egypt, that was romantic imagery. It's like if Shakespeare had written, "Shall I compare thee to a sewer grate in July?" Now let's talk PDA, public displays of affection. Don't. In modern times, you post soft launch couple pics on Instagram. In ancient Egypt, even thinking about kissing in public was borderline blasphemy. Hugging in the street, get smote by Ra, making out near a temple. The gods send locusts and shame. Instead, affection was expressed subtly, sharing onions, letting your perfume cone drip on someone else's wig, making matching amulets shaped like tiny fertility gods. Awkward first gift, but hey, the thought counts. But it wasn't all awkward vegetables and beetles. Ancient Egyptians took love seriously. There were full-on love spells, erotic poems, and even couples buried together with inscriptions like, "May we be joined in the field of reeds forever drunk and smelling faintly of myrrh." Okay, that one's kinda sweet. Aside from the eternal hangover part. Of course, heartbreak existed too. If your lover dumped you, you didn't just cry and binge-eat figs. You wrote curse spells, real ones. May their beer turn to urine. May their eyeliner never be even again. Petty, yes. Powerful, also yes. So what did I learn? Modern dating is awkward, but ancient Egyptian dating, it's a whole Olympic sport of body odor, onion bouquets, and emotional damage wrapped in papyrus. Still, in some weird way, it worked for them. They sang, they drank, they flirted with vegetables, and wrote poems about hippos. So maybe next Valentine's Day, instead of roses, I'll just throw a beetle at someone and whisper, "You smell like the Nile in July." If they don't run, they're the one IV. Social customs. You call it weird. They call it tradition. 800 words. Gen Z POV. Disgusting, dramatic, and historically hilarious. By day 2, hour 25, I thought nothing could shock me anymore. Then I met ancient Egyptian traditions. You think your family has weird customs? My guy, they have weddings that start with economic contracts and end with group bathroom time. Let's start with marriage. I had this image of a romantic ceremony by the Nile Dove's music, some eyeliner, tears, maybe even an awkward slow dance. Instead, I watched a wedding begin with two families bartering goats and bread, signing what looked like a tax form, and then bowing to statues before consummating the contract behind a clay wall. There was no DJ, no open bar, just a priest yelling blessings while everyone waited outside for the couple to seal the deal. No pressure. Also, fun fact, the phrase "open the envelope" had a very different meaning here. And yes, everyone knew when it was opened. Let's move on. Now, if you're wondering about bathroom privacy, the answer is absolutely none. Ancient Egyptians had public toilets. No walls, no doors, just a long stone bench with holes and a whole village of eye contact. You sit, you poop, you wave at your neighbor doing the same. "Good morning, Khufu Nitsiflo today." I have never clenched so aggressively in my life. Meanwhile, kids ran by with sticks, goats wandered in to spectate, and flies formed a mosh pit on every available surface. Toilet paper, ha! Try a reused sponge on a stick dipped in Nile water. Sanitary, not even in dreams. And speaking of dreams, death rituals here were somehow even weirder than life. When someone died, it was required that family members cry, not like a single tasteful tear. No, you had to scream, wail, beat your chest, throw sand in your hair, and sound like your favorite celebrity just unfollowed you. Couldn't muster enough grief. No problem. Hire professional mourners. Yes, there were literal crying freelancers, women who showed up to your funeral, howled like banshees, and made sure everyone knew the deceased was so loved, it made 5 strangers collapse dramatically. Imagine dying, and your cousin shows up late with 2 rented screamers and a guy banging a tambourine. I'm not saying I want that for myself. I'm also not saying I don't. Now, let's talk hydration, the main source of water. The Nile. Yes, the same river where people bathed, peed, washed their dead dumped offerings, and occasionally found floating leftovers of yesterday's war. And they drank it straight. No boiling, no Brita filter. Just scoop and sip. People genuinely praised it as the water that flows from the heavens. If heaven tastes like algae soup mixed with goat spit, then sure. Divine. I took 1 sip. My intestines did parkour. But here's the thing. To them, all of this, the toilet parties, the onion weddings, the funeral concerts, was normal. Sacred, even. These were rituals passed down by gods, not bizarre nightmare fuel. And honestly, the longer I stayed, the more I realized tradition is just peer pressure from dead people. They weren't being weird on purpose. They genuinely believed this was how to live a good life, honor the gods, and maybe not get cursed into a scarab in the afterlife. Still, I had one major takeaway. Never complain about modern life again. You don't need to cry professionally for a relative. You don't have to share a poop bench with 12 neighbors and a goat. And no one will ever hand you an onion and expect a proposal. So if your cousin's wedding is awkward, or your bathroom line is long, just remember, at least you didn't have to mourn your uncle by screaming in public while wiping with a Nile sponge. Ancient Egypt, come for the pyramids, stay for the trauma. Viewer's reaction. Please let me return to yelling at my boss on Slack. 400 words. I've been back from ancient Egypt for a few hours now. I've taken 6 showers. I've saged my soul. I've apologized to every bar of soap I've ever taken for granted. And yet, I can still smell the onions. I came into this thinking I'd witness something sacred, majestic. Ancient wisdom, golden rituals, timeless elegance. What I got was communal pooping, beetle love letters, and people rubbing goat butter on their wigs like it was a flex. The temples, beautiful. The pyramids, impressive. But let's be real. Everything else was a dusty fever dream held together by sweat onions and screaming. All those mystical traditions I saw in textbooks. Turns out they're just very expensive ways to be filthy. Perfume, spoiled meat juice, spiritual water, fish, pea, and hippo soup. Royal rituals, mostly yelling, crying, or being buried with stale bread. And don't get me started on the dating scene. If I ever see another romantic onion, I will throw myself into the Nile and let the crocodiles take me. So here's my final review of ancient Egypt. Sanitation 110, Romance 2, 10 points for creativity. Eyeliner, Game 1110, but may cause lead poisoning. Smell, please, don't ask. Honestly, I've learned my lesson. From now on, I will cherish clean water, private bathrooms, the fact that eyebrow removal is a choice, not a religious duty. And most of all, I will never complain about Slack again. I'll take passive-aggressive emails, awkward Zoom calls, and overpriced oat milk lattes over being reborn as a bald, green-faced, onion-scented concubine of Ra any day. Ancient Egypt. Thanks for the trauma. I'm going back to 2025, where my suffering comes with Wi-Fi. Good night, brave soul. Sleep well. May your dreams be free of beetles, bad breath, and ancient pickup lines. And may you always appreciate the simple modern joy of flushing toilets and optional eyebrows.